Hey listeners, how are you all? Thank you so much for being our awesome members. There's a lot to come more. Sit tight, be comfy, put your headphones, now let's begin. 5-year-old Naruto stretched from underneath the park bench. His blanket of an old newspaper flew away with the wind, his tired eyes slightly open. Naruto yawned while his tiny arms reached out. Good morning, Mikado, little Naruto said, holding a shiny rock within his hands. It sparkled in the sun's light, and tiny scratches to resemble a face appeared. Naruto smiled while stroking his rock, his only friend. The boy stood up, his black shirt and white baggy pants shifting slightly because of the light breeze. His foxy grin appeared when he spotted a playground. Keeping the rock htly clasped within his hands, he ran to the playground. He suspected since it was morning, the evil grown-ups who called him this demon, named Kyuubi, wouldn't be there. Cautiously, within the leaves of a bush, he checked for anybody. His cerulean eyes darting side to side, his amazing nose smelling the air. Nothing. Naruto then came out from the bushes, and ever so cautiously walked over to the sandbox. Smiling, sighing in relief, he sat in the sandbox and put down his pet rock. Although, the sand didn't feel very normal. Baka, a loud voice came from the sand. Naruto jumped from his spot. A hand and some more parts of the body emerged from the sand in annoyment. The smell of flowers and the warmth from another body filled Naruto's senses so much. He couldn't help but blush. Soon enough, after all the sand had brushed off, a girl stood before him. She wore a lavender shirt, and a darker shade of lavender skirt. It blew in the wind lightly, and her face remained in its pouting position. She had blonde hair that fell only to her shoulders. Her bangs clipped away to the side of her pale face. Her sapphire eyes sparkled even with anger burning in her eyes. Amy, Amy, she clenched her fists tightly in anger. The last bits of sand falling back into the sandbox, that meanie head. Naruto tilted his head when the girl began to cry. A scrape seemed to be on her arm, and this, Amy, person seemed to have abandoned her. Naruto frowned and placed his hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him. Hello little boy, she said through sniffles. Naruto's eye twitched. I'm not a little boy. I'm 5 years old, you know. She laughed a little. Silly, 5 is a young age. You're like me, I'm also 5 years old. She wiped her eyes with her little arms and smiled slightly at him. He tilted his head again, but he smiled anyways. So what's your name? The girl asks as the two walked over to the bench. Naruto scratched his head and blushed slightly. Well, my name is Naruto. That's a nice name. Mine is INO. It's Yamanaka INO. She smiled and held out her hand. Naruto smiled. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm glad to meet you, Yamanaka INO. He then pulled out his rock. This is my friend, my one and only friend. His name is Mikado. INO smiled at the rock and stroked it slightly. It's a cute rock, Naruto-kun. Hey, let's be friends. So then you'll have to. She hugged him tightly. He blushed at this action and nodded. It was overwhelming and rather hasty, but he had to admit that it was more than pleasant. INO seemed like a very social girl, and the light bouncing off her pale golden hair shone as much as she did. Suddenly, older people called out little INO's name. Naruto frowned. I have to go now, INO. She looked in the direction of which her parents were coming from, and replied to the calls. Then she turned to Naruto and frowned. Why? You can meet my parents. What are parents? He then asked. His eyes widened in curiosity as he tried to recall the term, processing it. Trying to feel any sort of memory to tell him what a parent was. It didn't really work. Then the calling became louder and louder as they approached. Naruto bit his lip lightly and ran off. Sorry INO, I have to go. INO tilted her head as her parents came for her. The two smiled at her and she turned to them. Why are you all by yourself, little INO? It's dangerous. I heard the demon boy likes to hang around here. The father said. INO shook her head. I'm fine, daddy. Besides, I only made new friends with this nice boy. He ran away though. Maybe his parents were calling him. Well, that's good, the mother then said. The demon boy doesn't have any parents, so that couldn't have been him. There was a slight darkness in the air and INO was confused by the concept of this demon boy they spoke of. She just shook her head and held her mom and dad's hands as they began to walk home. Ino then looked back to see if Naruto had been there, but there was nothing. Naruto sighed in relief in the shadows of the bushes. Rubbing his forehead, he frowned at the fact that his new friend had to leave. It felt like a fleeting moment, but the surge of happiness he got from her excitement still resonated in his heart. He continued to stare into the distance, hoping that someday he could really make friends. Although, luckily for him, that wasn't the last time he saw her. A year later, Yamanaka Ino had just finished picking flowers while skipping through the park. She sat on the bench where she and Naruto sat. Sighing, she muttered his name, hoping that he would magically appear. "Hello, Ino-chan," a voice then said from behind. Ino jumped up and smacked the face of Naruto. After realizing that it was him, she screamed and hugged him tightly. She smiled widely and dropped the flowers she just picked. "How come I haven't seen you for so long, Naruto-kun?" she asked, holding his hands tightly in her hands. Naruto was surprised on how much she cared. Not only has it been a whole year, but they've only known each other for the short length of 20 minutes. He blushed and scratched the back of his head. "I'm sorry, Ino-chan, I didn't think you'd want to play with me. Everyone hates me." He turned his head away and she raised an eyebrow. Taking her hand, she slapped him again, this time a little softer. "Idiot, I was looking for you whenever I had the time. I wanted to play with you and get to know you better. We did just become friends, and as friends I think we should spend more time together." Her innocence was admirable, her passion was desirable, and the two blondes stood in silence for a moment. The taller one waited for a reply, but Naruto simply shifted his weight side to side in embarrassment. Ino looked at him with her deep sapphire eyes. "Tell me, why you didn't know what parents are? I'm sure you should." "No, weren't you raised by them?" Naruto replied. "No, I grew up by myself. I took care of myself, ate by myself, and was all alone. Everyone hated me, no one wanted to help me, talk to me or anything." He lived a harsh life, so Ino felt this rush of concern paint her entire body, and she felt even worse about no being able to find him earlier. He gave her a sad smile and she stepped forward. Hugging him, she squeezed him slightly and mumbled, "Aishiteru." Naruto stood silent in her arms, a blush on his face. He then asked what it meant. She kept him in her arms. "I'm not sure. But mommy and daddy always tell each other that. Also, mommy says it's nice to say it to the people you care about." Naruto nodded his head and returned her hug. "Aishiteru to you too, Ino. Let's be friends for life." If anybody watched the two 6-year-olds interact, they'd simply laugh. It was a rather adorable sight as the two were still new to human interactions. Ciali the friendless except one, Naruto. "Let's guarantee that," she then said and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "I'm going to start enrolling in the academy tomorrow. You?" "Yeah, the old man told me I should," he said, rubbing the spot she kissed him, red painted on his face. There was a warm sensation that set up camp in that area, and he hoped deep down inside that it wouldn't go away. "Well then, I can't wait. I'm going to be the greatest kunoichi ever." She raised her fist high into the air with excitement. The blonde boy felt this excitement and clenched his fist in determina. "The OLD man told me about ninjas and everything. Although he's not always there to see me, I have heard that being the top ninja can make you Hokage. I want to be this Hokage, and be acknowledged by everyone in the village." Ino stared at Naruto with confusion and delight. "That's great, Naruto-kun." He beamed with confidence now and she laughed at his dream, hoping that someday he could make it a reality. The next morning, Naruto held his chest high as he walked towards the school. He could feel the wind blow with as much pride as he held, with as much excitement as he could hold. Soon he would have his chance to prove himself. In the distance he spotted the old man and ran up to him with a slight smile. "Old man," Naruto exclaimed, his hands firmly on his waist. "I'm ready to become a ninja." His smile widened and the sun glistened off his teeth. He could feel it drawing nearer, the time when he could be acknowledged. The old man Hokage just chuckled at the young boy. He adjusted his fan, Sai Hokage's hat, and took in some of the pipe he was smoking. Keeping it on the corner of his mouth, he patted Naruto's spiky golden hair, messing it up a tad bit. Then he pulled out a small necklace with a gold shuriken on it. It sparkled beautifully in the bright sunlight and Naruto's eyes widened. "Boy," the old-timer began, "this is from your father, he wishes for you to grow up to be a superb ninja. Good luck in the academy. No fooling around, and become its top ninja. I have faith that you can even beat that stubborn Uchiha child. His smile was a little crooked, but honest nonetheless. Nah. Naruto smiled and grabbed the necklace quickly, but delicately placing it around his neck. Nodding to the old man, another shinobi came from the academy doors. He fashioned a chunin vest with black sweater and pants. His hair was brown and fastened in a small ponytail. What was distinguishing the most was the scar across his nose. His tanned body shifted into an official stance, bowing before the Hokage. "Hello Hokage-sama," the man said. His voice was proper and the blonde boy looked in awe at the ninja. "Hello Iruka, this here is Naruto. I expect that you will be his teacher." Iruka looked down on the little boy. A flash of anger coursed through his body. Quickly turning to the Hokage he whispered, "That's the Kyuubi kid." His hands formed a tight fist. "He's the one who killed my pa." Rents. His body trembled with anger and Naruto recognized the body language. He frowned slightly, his awe taken away. Hokage placed a reassuring hand on Iruka's shoulder. "I know what the Kyuubi has done to your life. This boy though, isn't the demon itself, he simply holds the Kyuubi within him to prevent anyone else to die. He grew up like you, without parents, without many friends." He paused to give a short glance to the smaller one, smiling at him to turn back to the chunin. "Give the boy a chance, he's a good kid." Iruka looked at the Hokage and nodded. He took a deep breath as to wash away his previous flames of anger. In all honesty he felt a little embarrassed for being so angry at the small guy. With a smile, he then rested his hands on the shoulders of Naruto. "Kid, you're just like me." That fact helped him get over his past hatred. "Let's do our best to be friends, and I hope you'll grow up to become a great ninja." Naruto nodded and gave a foxy grin, his determination and happiness lighting up the newly formed friendship. "Mr. Iruka-sensei, I will become a great ninja and become the Hokage." The two older ones laughed as Naruto tilted his head. Shaking it off, he turned to see more kids come along. INO spotted Naruto, who was now swinging alone on the swing. His face looked emotionless, and she was concerned. Turning to the girl beside her, who happened to be Amy, she decided to ditch her. As she began to walk away, Amy's eye twitched and she turned to INO. About to grab her arm, INO turned around quickly with a shine in her eye. Dodging the grab, she sidestepped and tripped over Amy. "What's your problem, INO?" Amy asked, getting up from the ground. Little INO continued to glare at Amy and crossed her arms. "I've had it with you, Amy. I have a new friend who actually cares for me. So goodbye," INO remarked and stormed away in the direction of Naruto. Naruto swung back and forth, the easy breeze going through his golden hair. He was excited, yet nervous of being with all the other children. He kept on thinking, were they like their parents? How will he get acknowledged? But he shook his head, he needed to focus on becoming the top ninja. INO tapped Naruto on the shoulder and slightly tugged on its black sleeve. He turned to meet her blue eyes and her own blonde hair was a bit longer. She smiled at him and he got off the swing. Greeting each other with a hug, they began to talk. "So you excited about this, Naruto-kun?" she asked while they walked towards the academy. Naruto nodded and raised his fist up. "Of course. I can't wait to train and become the Hokage." He looked down with a fake smile, "And maybe have the villagers like me for once." INO smiled. "Yeah," was her only reply as the bell rang. Inside class, Naruto sat beside INO in a rather tired-looking board. The pineapple-haired boy snored softly and INO just whacked him on the head. "Shikamaru, wake up," she yelled. Naruto was startled by this and almost fell over. Another boy came over. Though rather chubby, he was cute. Tossing an empty chips bag into the garbage, he sat beside Shikamaru and shook him lightly. Another girl came and sat next to INO. She looked shy and just looked at the surface of her desk. Pink bangs covering her face. Iruka entered with a smile. All the children looked at him with excitement and Shikamaru woke up. He took out a list. "INO." INO shouted, "Present, Choji." The guy beside Shikamaru waved. "Sakura." The girl with pink bangs looked up and nodded. "Naruto, Shikamaru, Sasuke." A small boy below them looked up and muttered, "Present." Hee haw. DA's slight angry face and his raven hair swayed lightly. "Kiba, A brown-haired boy and his dog nodded. Hinata, a seemingly shy girl, muttered present as some of her hair fell to her face, and Shino, a boy with sunglasses, nodded in his seat. Good, everyone is here, and he smiled. What a small class one got. I wonder if they'll all make it to Genin. Iruka sighed and looked at his students. Now we'll begin with chakra. -2 years later, Naruto focused his shuriken clasped tightly in his right hand, staring straight at the targeting board, and threw it swiftly and rather silently. Iruka watched as it hit against the tree, not hitting the exact mark, but close around it. Naruto sighed in relief and smiled at his pretty good aim. Whenever he had the time he would practice until he improved just a bit. Then he would go and get some ramen. INO herself got it close to the target also and cheered, raising her arms. Yada! She screamed. Sakura smiled slightly. She and INO had become rather good friends. Taking a shuriken, she threw it and was further away than Naruto and INO. But still the throw was rather successful. The rest went, all pretty close, but not as close as Naruto and INO were. That was until 8-year-old Sasuke Uchiha stepped in and threw the shuriken to land directly on the right spot. The others were amazed and clapped for him. Naruto rolled his eyes in jealous. Why? And Sakura blushing at the success of her crush. That Sasuke always beating me, Naruto muttered, and INO just turned to him. It's okay, Naruto-kun, that's all the stuff he does. You, in the other hand, spend time with me, Shika. Choji and Sakura, at least you have friends. He has more time to train. Naruto nodded and turned to his blonde friend. Yeah, and even with that I won't let him beat me. INO giggled lightly. Naruto, we aren't going to have real matches until the final days before we graduate. True, but still I will defeat him, Naruto replied, clenching his fist. Of course, Naruto-kun, INO replied, smiling as Iruka dismissed the class. Naruto wandered the streets of Konoha, ignoring the glares received from the adults. He yawned. Quietruku ramen. Smiling, he ran there and sat on the stool, pulling out his trusted frog wallet filled with savings, money coming from the Hokage, ever so generous Iruka, and random money found on the street. He licked his lips in excitement and cooed out enough money for one bowl of ramen. Hey there, Naruto, the old man at the stand greeted. He was one of those who didn't hate Naruto. In fact, back in the day when Naruto had no allowance or even knew what money was, the old man gave him food, and Naruto was grateful for that. INO dropped the flower she was holding and looked up into the sky as she walked. Smiling, she was chanting Aishiteru, one of her favorite words. Not realizing that it meant, I love you, she continued using it with Naruto whenever they greeted and hugged. Recently, they would train together, but in secret, especially after what happened before. INO, her father yelled as he saw her swinging with Naruto, get away from him. INO frowned and walked over to her father. She turned to Naruto and mouthed sorry and waved. Naruto stared, slightly frightened of the father. He trembled in his seat as INO's father walked up to him. You boy, stay away from my daughter. And just before he hit Naruto, Iruka came out and stopped him. Stop it, he's just a boy, he's not a demon. Iruka yelled, and Inoichi just turned away in frustration. He grabbed INO's hand and walked away. Iruka just held Naruto in his arms to comfort him. She sighed and made a stop. She tilted her head and raised one of her eyebrows as she heard slurping noises. INO looked in front of her to see Naruto snacking on ramen. Hey Naruto-kun, she greeted happily and sat down next to him. Naruto turned to her after finishing his bowl with a random noodle on his cheek. He smiled widely and asked the old man for a bowl for her. She thanked him and watched as he put his bowl away and paid for his. Just as the ramen arrived, he was about to step off the stool, until INO grabbed his hand. Oh no, you don't. She started dragging him back up to his seat. He smiled his foxy grin and muttered Aishiteru as she pulled him into a hug. It's a weekend, Naruto-kun, and I won't see you till Monday. At least stay with me as I eat this ramen you bought for me. Naruto nodded, defeated by his best friend, and he sat there as she quietly ate her food. Naruto took in a deep breath and held out a simple silver bracelet before her. He smiled sheepishly as she turned and saw it. With wide eyes she accepted it and kissed Naruto on the cheek. He blushed and turned to the side as she fit it on. Taking the rest of his courage, he asked, "Do you like it?" "Of course, Naruto-kun," She exclaimed happily and smiled widely. She turned back to her ramen to finish it and she hopped off her seat along with Naruto. He smiled at her. So Ino-chan, will you train with me at our secret place tomorrow afternoon? He asked and she accepted. He handed over his special necklace to her. This was a way of keeping their promises. She held it tightly and put it around her neck. Nodding, she hugged him and ran off home. Naruto just smiled and watched contentedly as she ran off. When she arrived home, her smile was wide and her bracelet sparkled against the light. Her mother complimented the bracelet. But Inoichi was more suspicious. Inohime, where did you get that from? Ino looked at her father innocently. From a friend, daddy, of course. Which friend? Nah. She her hand over her mouth and she shook her head. I meant Shikamaru. My little girl is a liar. He muttered and Shikamaru and Choji walked in on them and they waved. Ino swallowed hard as her father took the bracelet from her. Taking it, her threw it against the wall. For all you know, it could be dangerous. Don't hate me, but this is all for your sake. He then used a jutsu to shatter it and she watched in utter horror. Eyes watering, she ran upstairs. I hate you, daddy. She yelled, entering her room. Her mother looked concerned and Choji and Shikamaru walked over into a different room. Inoue just stood there shocked next to a broken bracelet. The next day Naruto sat holding a kunai in one hand, and in the other hand he was reading a random short novel. He smiled as he realized what Aishiteru meant. Should I tell Ino-chan? It said right there. The man just told his friend Aishiteru, it must mean I love you. He never really thought about what kind of love. Ino came walking slowly into the secret place. She held Naruto's necklace in her hand and handed it over to Naruto. He took it happily and pointed out to Ino what he just read. Oh, she muttered, a blush forming at her cheeks. Aishiteru means, I love you. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I guess it worked with us, right? He didn't blush at all. He felt, hey, love, we're best friends, of course we love each other. He took her hand. Yeah, we love each other, right? Best friends for life. Ino's heart sank slightly. It's not like she liked him like that. It's just that, what happens when she wants more? Being 8 years old, she doesn't realize what she's thinking. Love, how can an 8-year-old seriously understand its meaning? With them the word, like, means a lot. A crush is like, oh my gosh, we're going to get married and everything. It confuses most. Older kids think that it's just plain stupid. Yeah, she responded. She smiled sweetly at him and he let out a foxy grin. She felt her body warm up. What happened in the morning was starting to go away. What happened last night started to go away. That was until he noticed something. Inohime. He blushed as he started to try to use this suffix. He believed she was a princess. She's pretty, he told himself. She's strong, he nodded. She gets scary at times, he admits, but he knows she's amazing. A great friend indeed. Yes, Naruto-kun. Shish. He pulled the sleeves of her shirt over her wrists. What's wrong? She sensed the fakeness in her voice, but she knew that Naruto was slightly dense. After all, he didn't even notice the adoration a certain Hyuga girl had for him. She pitied Hinata. Such a shy girl. Your bracelet is gone. She felt the devastation in his voice. Her heart beat faster and faster. Why? You don't like it? Ino's voice wouldn't come out. She felt the words. She wanted to yell and cry and blame her daddy. For some reason, the words just wouldn't come out. Why, Inohime? Why? Ino fell to her knees. I'm sore. Why, Naruto-kun? She straightened to cry and faced him. My daddy, he doesn't like you and I knew it, was a cold, harsh answer. No one likes me, every adult hates my guts. That's not true, Naruto. She replied and placed her hand on his shoulder. I like you. Your friends like you. The Hokage and Iruka-sensei like you. Then why does everyone else hate me? He asked. Ino honestly didn't know. She bit her bottom lip. I don't know. She tilted her head slightly. Was there anything to hate about Naruto? He was cute, innocent, although slightly dense, and he has had the occasional prank or two. She looked into his tear-stained eyes. Maybe it was your pranks. No, he replied. They never got too angry at me for them. I always did them just to get attention. Iruka-sensei forgave me for them. And how can an entire village hate you for just that? He sighed and turned around. I need to know why people hate me so much. Naruto-kun, she muttered. He turned to her with a frown. Let's train now. Okay, he replied, a sigh emitting from his mouth. I will ask Hokage what's wrong with me. And I'll ask Daddy, she assured. Let's just get our minds off of this topic. Okay, INO Haim. After they hugged each other goodbye, Naruto head towards the Hokage tower and INO back home. Daddy, I'm home from training, she yelled, entering her home. Inoichi turned to his wife. She's talking to me again, he whispered. She must have met with him again. Seriously, the mother replied. Please don't be so harsh. What you did to her bracelet, it must have crushed her. And the punishment you gave her this morning, the way she defied it and ran off. Don't you think that this Kyuubi kid is a nice, fun kid who makes our INO happy? And by the way, I think she has feelings for him. Inoichi star. Ed at the direction his daughter walked off to. She's an 8-year-old honey, she can't be liking people already. Geez, he rolled his eyes and received a bonk on his head. What? Don't you remember your first girlfriend? As in a friend of the opposite sex. If you two became best friends, and eventually you fell in love with her, wouldn't you hate it if your father just shut her out of your life? And for a reason you have no idea about. Inoichi heard enough. She was contemplating on their own relationship. He nodded at her and he walked over to the kitchen where INO was eating some snacks. INO honey, he started. My INO Haim, are you okay? Of course Daddy, Naruto-kun and I had a good sparring match, she replied, taking some bites of her cookie, although I think he held back. Wow, he replied. And he didn't go berserk or anything. Of course not Daddy, she smiled, a sweet one at him. He recognized the smile. She hadn't been that happy in a long time. He's my best friend. And I know he would never go berserk. She looked at him. Can I tell you something? Of course, he replied. In his head he worried. What is it? Naruto-kun tells me that he feels so sad, that people keep on spitting at him. Hating him, rejecting him. She laughed a bit. That's why all he wears is that black shirt with orange pants. She frowned. And you Daddy, you hate him too. A tear rolled down her pale face. Why? Why old man? Naruto yelled. Tears in his eyes. Why does everyone hate me? He fell to his knees. Why can't I just live a normal life like my friends? A mom and dad that love me, a place. A warm place to call home. Someone to eat ramen with me. One Naruto. You have people who love you, me and your sensei. Iruka even eats ramen with you too, does he not? B-U-T, yeah, at least I have that. Then there's no problem. There is a problem, Hokage. Old man, people spit at me, throw rocks and strange words at me. I've been told that some of them were swear words, insults. Why do they call me a demon? And isn't Kyuubi dead? Didn't Yondaime-sama kill him? Tears were spilling and his hands were on the Hokage's desk. Why? What's wrong with me? Hokage smoked from his pipe and lowered his hat. Naruto, he started. Yondaime didn't kill Kyuubi. What? INO shouted, her eyes widening. That scary demon is inside of Naruto. Yes, and that is why I despise the little boy. The demon who killed most of the village is within that boy, he growled. He's dangerous. Daddy, INO shouted, a pout well placed on her face. Can't you see how awesome Naruto-kun is? He's kept a demon thing inside of him and he hasn't ever gone berserk. Give him credit for saving the village by containing it. But it's not my fault, he responded. Is that the only reason why? I know, Hokage responded. People in this village just don't understand it. All they see is a demon within you. They don't see the strong Naruto that your father wanted them to see. That's why you have that dream. Yeah, Naruto. He works hard. He wants to become Hokage. He wanted to be acknowledged by his fellow villagers. INO stared at her father. You understand, right? Yeah, Inoichi replied. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry for treating him like that. I'm sorry about the bracelet. It's okay Daddy. I'm sure Naruto will forgive you. How about we invite him for dinner? Yeah, her mother said, walking in. I'm going to start cooking. We've met all of INO's friends except for Naruto. He seems like such a nice boy. He keeps our INO happy, and I heard he keeps up with the Uchiha boy. His ears twitched. Sounds like a good boy. Naruto sighed, taking in all the information from the Hokage. at least I know why people hate me so much. That's why Ino's daddy won't accept me. He got scared instantly when he bumped into someone. A strong hand helped him up, his eyes locked with another pair of blue eyes. Naruto-kun, she greeted. Ino Haim, Naruto said, he literally glomped her. Hello Naruto. Another voice called out. Naruto looked up and smiled, not something you would expect. Ino sighed, she thought Naruto would be scared. Hello Ino's dad. Naruto responded, how are you doing? Inoichi smiled at the boy, great, relieved actually. Sorry for breaking poor Ino Haim's bracelet. It's okay. Naruto began, he pulled out a new bracelet, Well he blushed. Well I felt that I should get Ino this bracelet as well. It's pretty and since she liked the other one I think that she would like this one too. Inoichi laughed lightly, you surprise me Naruto. He saw the blush spread across Ino's face and laughed again. He watched as they exchanged glances and as Ino received the bracelet. He took Naruto's hand, okay, let's get going. Okay Ino's dad. Naruto ate quickly and happily at the food prepared in front of him. He licked his lips after emptying his plate and blushed as he saw Inoichi and Ino's mother's expression. Ino just laughed after finishing her water. Naruto sheepishly asked for more and Ino's mother happily gave him more. Inoichi looked at Naruto and found that he wasn't so bad after all. He decided to let Ino stay with him. And he promised to never look at him as if he was a demon. He sighed thinking of all the other people who would still call him that. Although he could not imagine the pain that Naruto has been through for so long. Naruto walked up to the door after helping clean up. He turned to Ino and her family with a smile, well I'm off home. Be careful, Ino's mother stated, and take this, she handed over containers of food. Try not to eat only the cups of ramen. Have a more balanced diet. Naruto nodded and waved, bye everyone. He glanced at Ino, will I see you tomorrow? Ino looked up at her father and wondered what he would say. Seeing her face Inoichi nodded with a calming smile, it's fine Ino. Yeah, she responded to Naruto, let's spar again and this time, don't hold back. Naruto laughed and scratched his nose, yeah, you neither. The necklace around his neck glistened and his smile widened. Waving again the Uzumaki was separated from the Yamanakas. The two sat back to back in the middle of a meadow. The grass swayed along with their hair. The two panted as their spar ended in a tie. A smile crept onto both of their faces, Ino's pale face lightening up a bit. Ino-chan, I can't wait till we become actual ninjas. We can go on missions together and I'll be one step closer to being Hokage. Ino closed her eyes as her smile widened. Yeah, but I heard that the teams are only of 3. Who do you think would be on our team? I'm not totally sure. The two laughed. Thanks to the bonding of Uzumaki and Yamanaka, Naruto got to train more with Ino and even her two close friends Choji and Shikamaru. Their dads eventually took a liking to Naruto and even helped with training. They were surprised as to how much stronger he was becoming. He was rivaling the ever-so-famous Uchiha Sasuke. But he still needed a lot of work before he becomes the favored Hokage. Naruto was practicing his aim while Ino was taking a break drinking tea with Choji, Sakura and Shikamaru. They smiled peacefully at the floating clouds until Shikaku, Shuza and Inoichi appeared before their mother. There has been a problem with AC rank mission, Inoichi said with half his breath. We rushed to the scene but they were already dead. It must be bad for those new genin. After a long period of D rank they finally get AC rank and they couldn't even handle that. What was the mission? Shikamaru asked. Was it really that hard? We don't think so. Shika's dad replied. It's just transporting a man over to a village in the wave country. With you guys becoming genin in the next 2 days I bet you can do it. Then let's, Naruto said with a huge smile. Hey, I bet we can do it. But Naru-chan. Sakura began. Actually genin died. Sakura, don't be scared, Ino commented comforting asked Hokage-sama. He'll let you. This would make excellent training, Inoichi started, although it is dangerous. You will be getting a great Junin leader, her name is Anko, and she's even a special Junin. And you made a promise to us a few days ago right? Your way of the ninja. His Nindo Inoichi, Shuza said with a smile. Naruto nodded, I am not going to take back my words. I'm going to become Hokage and until that day I am not going to die. Without a second thought he ran off to see the Hokage. Inoichi, Chusa and Shikaku stared at each other. This'll be interesting. Who else do you think they'll send? Chusa started. I heard that Anko was going to bring with her 3, and then Team Guy will be backup. You call them Team Guy? Shikakao asked. That's funny. I heard they're new as well. But they have a Hyuga kid which is very impressive. They'll do well. The other genin are scared, with Naruto asking. I bet Hokage-sama will send out the top 3 in their class. Which are? Ino finished her tea and looked up at the Ino Shikacho circle, me, Naruto and Sasuke. Hokage finally agreed after many of Naruto's childish pleas. Fine. It's a simple mission anyways. It was unfortunate for the previous team to just die like that. The Junin leader was new as well. This time we're more prepared. What are you planning this time, old man? Naruto asked, the necklace around his neck shining more than usual. Sandaime laughed at the determination and seriousness in his face. Naruto kept on a fox-like smirk knowing that he's allowed to go already. Well, we're going to send out 2 teams. Originally it was supposed to be a genin team and a special Junin, but since this special Junin is to be a sensei for this year's genin selection, she could use some experience. Along with her I will be sending the top 3 graduates in your class, Naruto. But don't fret, this will not be your final team for sure. Naruto sighed in relief knowing the top 3, oh. He realized the flaw in the statement. Does that mean I'm separated from Ino-chan? I'll tell you this, she is the female on your team besides your teacher, but I will not tell you your 3rd member. Naruto smiled widely, and was to leave the room, but as he waved goodbye he crashed into someone. Oh, Gomen, he looked up to see Kunoichi. Oh Anko, Hokage started. I would just like to say that this boy will be assisting you on your mission, his name is Naruto. Anko looked at Naruto, placing her finger under his chin. She stared into his eyes. Seems like an okay kid. She licked her lips. I'm looking forward to seeing you in action, Naruto. Naruto's innocent head tilted slightly. Frowning he turned around and walked away. Anko placed her hands on her hips with a faint smile as Naruto placed his hands behind his head. With that she closed the door and walked up to the Hokage's desk. Smirking she took her left hand and ruffled her hair lightly, awaiting for the Hokage to speak. Anko, you know well that this mission could turn dangerous, Hokage-sama started with a serious tone. His hands were over his mouth and the papers listing the deceased genin team were laid out on his table. Anko nodded calmly, her face stern and strong. Hokage sighed and took out 3 other papers. These are the papers of the genin that are to be joining you on this mission. Only 2 of the 3 will be the ones who you are looking after when the genin exams finish. That's if they pass the test, she replied smirking, but looking at these guards they should have no problem. The Hokage smiled slightly before continuing, I just called you here to look these over so you'll have a better idea of which little ninjas you'll be taking with you. Team Guy is reliable as well. Anko nodded while looking through the papers. She skipped the Uchiha one, knowing that the name clearly states his reputation. Looking over Ino's, she liked how she had top grades and interesting teacher comments. She'll be fun to look teach, she thought to herself. Laying those 2 papers back down on Hokage's desk, she looked over at Naruto's paper. The photo had a pretty cheerful looking Naruto. Some of his hair over his eyes. His smile was like a fox and his eyes showed excitement. Looking over his paper she smirked at how close his grades were to the Uchiha. His share comments were close to those of Ino and it wrote that he trained under the Ino Shikacho formation. He seems to be an interesting one, Anko finally said, returning the last sheet. I like him. Hokage laughed lightly while putting away the papers. Glad you like him. I had told Naruto that he was to meet you with the other 2 in cell 4 at the gates tomorrow at 8 in the morning. He looked at her, his Hokage's hat covering the left side of his face. Is this understood? Hi. Naruto winced in pain after being knocked down by Choji's meat tank. He smiled through his pain, getting up with a kunai in hand. Choji looked at Naruto with a smile as well. As stubborn as usual, he muttered. After increasing the size of his right arm he tried to knock out Naruto, but Naruto dodged it quickly, throwing his kunai at the big-boned boy. Inoichi stopped the battle. Good job you 2, but it's getting late. Some of us have an important mission tomorrow, so as said earlier this is our last training session. I know you 4 are going to become genin and will do great with your missions. Although with your perky attitudes, he began looking at INO then Naruto, you won't like the D-rank missions too much. Shikamaru yawned. We would have just become ninjas, there is no need to get so excited. It's just too troublesome. Choji started munching on the chips his father handed to him. Seems interesting, he spoke. Crumbs and spit coming from his mouth. I just hope I'm on Sasuke-kun's team, Sakura replied, and I hope to become as strong as Ino-chan as well. Ino patted her friend on the head as if they were kids again and Sakura stuck out her tongue. The families bid farewell and Naruto headed over to Ichiraku's for some dinner. He waved a final goodbye to his 5 friends and, as extra training, she ran as fast as he could but trying his best not to be seen. Inoichi was helping with his stealth techniques and speed, Chusa with taijutsu, and Shikaku tried his best to educate Naruto further. Unfortunately he could never beat Shikaku nor Shikamaru at shogi. As he reached the stand he saw Sasuke there standing and staring at the stand. Naruto lifted his eyebrow in curiosity, looking to see if there was anything interesting there besides the ramen. To his luck it might have been a new flavor. Or even better, a 50 off sale. Sasuke turned slightly surprised to see Naruto. A faint blush appeared on his pale cheeks as a grumble was heard from his stomach. Naruto couldn't help but laugh as he took out his frog wallet. Come on Sasuke, since we are going on a mission together. Tomorrow, I'll treat you to eat here. Only this once though, he pouted as half of his wallet emptied. The Hokage cut down on my allowance. Sasuke smirked at Naruto. I don't need your charity. I guess teamwork is an essential thing to build up. Naruto rolled his eyes at Sasuke's arrogance. Okay then, he replied as the two walked over to the seats. Miso, shouted Sasuke. Pork, shouted Naruto. As the ramen came Naruto ate through it quickly. Training really made him hungry. Asking for a second he turned to Sasuke who calmly ate his own. He tilted his head slightly, pouting at the Uchiha. Sasuke, what is it like to what Naruto? Sasuke asked, as if knowing what Naruto was to say. He finished his ramen and looked at the boy. To lose my entire family and clan to my own brother. He took a napkin and quickly wiped his face. It hurts Naruto. Probably as much or even more than the pain you experienced growing up. Actually, ever since you met the Yamanaka your life wasn't as bad, right? He stood from his seat and left some money on the table. You don't need to poe for me, he muttered. I have a lot tomorrow, you better not just get in the way. Naruto nodded, swiftly thinking he hurt the Uchiha's feelings. Sighing he paid for his ramen and ran home to catch some sleep. The Junin standing guard yawned as Cell 4 arrived with Anko, Sasuke and Ino. His IBR outwitched seeing a man and young man looking almost the same. Green spandex, orange leg warmers and hilarious bowl cuts. The eyebrows stood out as well and what scared him was the amount of push-ups they were doing simultaneously. A young girl shook her head, he bangs brushing against her Hittite and the buns in her hair swaying slightly. The other was a Hyuga, his eyes white, silver and pupilless. The Junin waved at Anko, the special Junin who was exceptionally dangerous. He quickly recognized the Uchiha and smiled at the girl who he knew as the flower girl at the Yamanaka place. Although she looked a bit troubled and paranoid looking behind her every couple of seconds. A loud yell was heard which caused everyone to turn around. Naruto's right arm waved around the air, his bag securely held with his left. The place where his headband was to soon be were loose bangs, his hair spiky reaching just under his ear. He stopped running standing next to Ino. He panted apologizing in between breaths. Getting up he smiled at everyone. Let's go. Naruto. Ino yelled smacking his head. Everyone's sweat dropped as Naruto crashed into the ground. You had me worried. Gomen, he muttered rubbing the lump on his head. An old man came up to them, his cheeks pink from just drinking. Man his breath reeks of alcohol, Tenten muttered. Ino who had walked next to a fellow girl agreed and the two shared a laugh. Rock Lee walked up to Naruto and scared him slightly with the nice guy pose. Naruto's eye twitched as he noticed the eyebrows. Let's be the best of friends Naruto-kun. Lee screamed, anime tears falling from his eyes. Guy-sensei and Anko finished talking with the old man as Neji made another comment. Can we go yet? The trip was rather smooth, they raced for the first part. Guy carrying the old man on his back. Within one day they had been pretty close to their destination. Naruto was about to leap ahead when a giant sword passed Naruto. He fell over backwards as Anko sent out snakes from both her arms, and the mist in the forest thickened. Sasuke smirked as he felt a killing intent as the others took their positions. A hand reached out to grab the sword. ND Guy shouted dynamic entry, knocking the mysterious ninja backwards. Ino and Naruto protected the old man along with Tenten and Neji. Lee quickly ran up to the ninja but got knocked over with a single punch. Before Guy was to react, a number of Senbon were blocked with the mysterious ninja's sword. Zabuza. A voice called out, quite the feminine voice as well. A masked ninja came down and threw another Senbon, knocking Zabuza out. I have this missing nin, she said to the others. Jumping into the trees, Anko walked up to him, her asking, is he dead? The masked ninja nodded and jumped away. Guy sniffed the air much to everyone's fright. He noticed that they were near and the old man agreed. It was night the next day when they arrived. Ino, Tenten and Anko quickly went to the bed the CL INO provided and the rest of Cell 4 were talking. Sasuke was looking outside and Naruto left to train. That guy with the huge sword might attack again, he muttered to himself, throwing random ninja weapons at the tree. Training is very important. He continued to train until he came to his limit. A peaceful wind blew by the next morning. Naruto was sleeping contentedly and no one had come to look for him, knowing that he would be fine. He got up and rubbed his eyes and picked up his sweater. The necklace shone, which really woke him up, and he finally noticed a figure coming over. She was wearing a pink kimono and she was carrying a basket. Naruto blushed at how pretty she looked as she smiled at him. Hello there, she muttered. Naruto didn't really notice how familiar that voice should have sounded. He smiled at her, returning the greeting. So what brings you here? You look kind of worn out. I was just training. I'm on a mission, although I haven't become a genin yet. He yawned and looked at her in the eyes. I need to train so I won't be a burden. You have someone to protect? She asked, her eyes looking more attentive. Yeah, it's part of the mission. I mean, she continued. Do you have someone who is precious to you? Oh, of course. He started a blush on his cheeks. A really close friend of mine is on this mission with me. She's precious to me. Then remember to protect her. And she will keep you strong. She smiled. It's best to fight to protect than just to kill. You need to have more meaning in fights. She got up and picked up her basket, turning away. What's your name? She finally asked. Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. The future Hokage. She smiled. I'm Haku. Beginning to walk, he let out something else. By the way, I'm a boy. With that, Naruto fainted, later to be awakened by an angry blonde. Everyone sat lazily sipping a cup of tea. The mother of little Inari and daughter of their client, Tsunami, was preparing the rest of breakfast. Nari's hat and brown hair helped him conceal himself, as the aura around him made him seem like he didn't want to be there. Tenten would glance over to him every once in a while and Anko looked around the room with a bit of anger and concern. Where are Naruto and Ino? She asked, grumbling between words. Tazuna yawned, but before answering, Guy spoke up. Oh, I saw them leave. He yelled rather loudly. Neji and Tenten cringed at the sound of his voice, being the ones who sat next to him. Lee smiled widely and stared admirably at his sensei. Well, Naruto left last night and the Ino girl left earlier this morning, angry. He gave Anko his good guy pose before continuing. She's probably out to bring him back here safe and sound. The door burst open with a rather furious Ino. She dragged Naruto over to the next room and shut the door tight. Everyone just stared silently as loud muffles were coming through the door. Tsunami brought out their breakfast and Ino came out with a content look. Anko smirked on the inside while Sasuke and Neji shivered slightly. Guy and Lee simultaneously greeted Ino good morning, which creeped her out as well, accepting tea and more from Tsunami. With Naruto, he was lying on the ground in a bit of pain. Two rather large lumps sat happily on his head and a bruise just stood out over his eye. He muttered, Ino-chan. Before sitting up and taking off his sweater, he headed out the door. Morning TT Ibeo. He yelled, the two lumps on his head magically disappearing. Everyone else nodded at him as he took his seat in between Sasuke and Ino. Good morning, Dobi, he muttered, finishing his own breakfast, giving Naruto a quick smirk. Naruto grumbled at this morning greeting along with his stomach. Going back to old habits, He wondered to himself, taking a sip of tea. He glanced over at Sasuke with a frown. Whatever tem, he mumbled back. Well, Tazuna began getting up to stretch. Get ready soon, Konoha shinobi. He demanded, and they all nodded at their client. The group surrounded Tazuna on their way to the bridge. There was a clear sky and the construction workers there were friendly towards the group. For 2 straight hours they simply hung around, each person taking turns closely watching Tazuna. The last shift belonged to Naruto, who had grown great interest in building bridges. Ojiazan, he yelled as he directed others, Ojiazan tt Ibeo. Tazuna smiled at Naruto. Not entirely had grown respect, but he did trust them. He felt something bad was going to happen eventually, but he ignored the eerie feeling, responding, Hello Naruto. YS must have been working hard on this bridge tt Ibeo, he stated, swaying his body impatiently. Have you decided on a name yet? Tazuna shook his head and wiped sweat off his wrinkled forehead. We're waiting for an appropriate and rightful name to come along. He gave Naruto another friendly smile before Ritari's scene stays calm. Everyone just stood in place, most of them wearing the outfits you usually see them in during the anime or manga. Naruto and Ino's outfits were slightly different thanks to the change in events. Ino wore a sleeveless purple shirt with lavender stripes, 2 near her stomach and 2 on her left shoulder. A simple cosmos flower was decorated under the 2 stripes that resigned over the left shoulder. Her neck down to her knees was covered in bandages and arm warmers. Whatever you call them, were still there. The place where her future Hittite was to be placed was nothing, so all you saw was a plain purple skirt. Naruto wore a sweater similar to his usual one, except no white furry thing and collar. Instead there was a hood, and this sweater didn't have the ability to close. Underneath he wore a black t-shirt and he continued to wear orange pants. Later in Ide, as the workers walked away waving their goodbyes to the Konoha shinobi, a thick mist covered the area. Tenten, Neji, Naruto and Lee quickly surrounded Tazuna, keeping their eyes out for anything moving within the mist. Anko pulled Ino closer, telling her to be careful, and as they turned their heads simultaneously, a groan was heard. From where they were they could see a number of punches quickly being blown to some unknown source. The one delivering the punches were none other than Metagai. Turning their hands again, the clashing of ninja weapons were heard. Senbon and a kunai, Tenten muttered to her teammates and Naruto. One belonging to that mysterious ninja who picked up the missing nin, and the other belonging to Sasuke. Naruto growled. Lucky, he muttered, facing Sasuke direction. But he didn't feel that way anytime soon. 2 of the ninjas came from nowhere with dangerous-looking weapons. Lee screamed a Konoha senpu and Naruto threw 2 kunai along with Tenten, who threw 4 shuriken. Neji muttered Byakugan, seeing the 2 figures easily and preparing his gentle fist stance. Ino stumbled towards them as snakes came from Anko's arms towards the one on the left. He PPED backwards, slicing the snakes in half, then throwing a giant shuriken. Anko smirked. Jumping over the shuriken, she licked her own kunai before launching it with amazing force. While one of them falling over, the other ran towards Tazuna. Ino stood in front of the old man and screamed before punching him in the face. Both ninjas burst into water as Ino felt the presence of the real forms. Naruto flipped backwards twice, preparing himself beside Ino, while Tenten took out even more kunai, flinging them everywhere. Lee nodded as he heard 4 burst, and he released another Konoha senpu, causing the mysterious ninja to fly backwards. Anko felt that they were capable of handling those ninjas, so she quickly ran to Sasuke's side. She had found him with several kunai in his back. His eyes shifted left then right while a Ginit shuriken remained in his hand. The ninja he was fighting was nowhere in sight. Sasuke! Anko yelled, pushing him aside as Senbon rained from above. The masked ninja stared contently at the woman in pain. Sasuke frowned before taking his opportunity to fling the giant shuriken at the masked one. But when the masked one vanished, he flinched before he felt someone punch him from behind. Tazuna was shaking in fear at the sound of hits and shinobi weaponry. In front of him was Ino, behind him was Tenten, to his right was Lee, and on his left was Neji. Behind you, Naruto! Neji yelled, watching the chakra current dashing towards Naruto. Naruto nodded, turning around, dodging the dangerous-looking claw of a weapon, and plunged a kunai into the ninja's stomach. The second one then came to attack Naruto from behind, and his claw-like weapon dug itself into Naruto's back. He coughed out blood falling and landing right beside the body of the ninja he plunged his own kunai into. Neji cringed at the painful look on Naruto before hitting the remaining ninja. Ino's eyes widened at Naruto's hard landing and randomly threw another kunai. "Ino!" Tenten yelled, biting her bottom lip. "That was a bad idea." She mumbled to herself. Li Hu was heading to help Nei. "I was hit by the kunai launched by Ino and he fell over." The remaining ninja took this as an opportunity to finish the boy. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Li Hu at that moment. Rolled over. Getting back up, he kicked the ninja in the face, knocking him over. Naruto winced before rolling over. His enemy had NT died yet and was planning to finish off Naruto. He didn't allow that and punched him in the stomach. Guy stared at the opponent in front of him as the mist began to thin. He had punched a lot into his enemy, but he didn't come out untouched. Being able to dodge the giant sword, he hadn't had enough time to recover fast enough to dodge a punch. He frowned, for at the corner of his eye he saw his students fighting. "They can do it," he thought to himself before attempting to hit the mysterious shinobi with the rather large sword once more. Anko took out another needle from her back as the blood from her arm rubbed onto her face. Getting up, she saw a slightly beat up Sasuke panting. Making the appropriate hand signs, she let out a giant fireball, finally hitting the masked one in the face. "Nice shot," the masked one called out in a soothing, feminine voice. From that, the two assumed that their opponent was a woman. There were several ashes on her mask as she stood up. Suddenly disappearing again, she made her own hand signs. Above Sasuke, Anko yelled. Sasuke dodged the critical amount of Senbon and jumped into the air. With this, he watched as the masked ninja stare at him. Frowning at how much he was being underestimated, he quickly attached 5 explosive notes onto 5 separate kunai before throwing them towards the appropriate areas. Anko put her arm in front of her face to protect herself. From within the smoke, she let snakes crawl from her sleeves. As they hissed, they managed to grab a hold of the ninja's arm. Unfortunately, it burst into water. "Water clone," Sasuke and Anko muttered. Chizuna bit his bottom lip as the young ninjas in front of him pant. They finally managed to kill the 2 hunter ninjas. Naruto was the first to get up and run towards Sasuke and his opponent. Lee smiled at his excitement and decided to follow as well. Ino and Tenten sighed in sync before following the boys, and Neji stayed behind with Chizuna. "That Naruto kid is sure fired up," Chizuna commented as Neji sighed. Chizuna turned to the Hyuga prodigy with a smile. "That final attack you used on the last one sure got him good." Neji nodded before turning on his Byakugan again. "It's what is expected, sir." Guy groaned as the sword ripped in half his Junin vest. He had nearly taken a critical hit but was able to counter it and hit the sword-wielding ninja with his leg. "You are good," came a slightly muffled voice. Guy looked up at his opponent. "You are too." He wiped some sweat from his forehead. "What is your name?" "HMPH," the man replied, placing the huge sword over his shoulders. "My name is Zabuza Momochi, and yours?" "Maeda Guy," Guy replied before the two continued their combat. Anko felt the presence of the other ninjas coming. She took this opportunity to help out Guy. The masked opponent was powerful, but not too powerful. She found that this was an excellent opportunity for them to work on teamwork and their ninja skills. Besides, from the sounds of Guy's yells, he might have needed help. She licked 2 kunai before launching them, both hitting Zabuza squarely on his back. He winced in slight pain and turned around to meet the purple-haired woman. "This'll be fun," muttered Zabuza, jumping back to get some equal distance. He swung his sword around, taunting the 2 highly skilled ninja, and with a flash the mist thickened. "Zabuza-san," the masked woman called out. Naruto and Sasuke, who were closer to the masked one, flinched. They finally realized that the people attacking were the exact same people from before. Lee frowned at this and Tenten let out a sigh. Ino shivered slightly as she felt the fog thicken. "It's a Juzabuza-san made the mist even thicker," the masked one said to herself. "He's either about to kill them, or he's in trouble." She readied a single-handed sign. "I need to finish sooner." Naruto flinched as he felt chakra pulsate in the air. The water from below the bridge fell like rain randomly onto the bridge, leaving puddles everywhere. "Secret art jutsu," she muttered, "crystal ice mirrors." With that, Tenten, Ino, Sasuke, Naruto and Lee looked up. "What an amazing jutsu," Lee muttered. He frowned at its awesomeness. He himself was only able to do taijutsu after all. As the ninja began to float, Lee sprang up and tried to kick her in the face. But his kick was caught and he cringed and yelled in pain. As his foot was pierced with Senbon formed from the water. Actually, it was ice. The mysterious ninja had some sort of ability to make water into ice, explaining the ice mirrors. Lee, Tenten screamed, readying her own weapons. Throwing 5 shurikens, she pulled out a scroll, summoning herself a katana. Jumping up, she slashed away at the masked one. But she had vanished. Ino's eyes widened, for she was about to attack as well. The ninja's figure fell into the mirrors and she had appeared right in front of her. Ino threw a kunai quickly in front of her before punching the mirror. She held her fist close to her and winced in pain. No only had it not gone through, but the ninja transferred into a different mirror. They all looked at the mirrors surrounding them and they felt slightly dizzy as the ninja was now jumping from mirror to mirror. Sasuke, along with everyone else, threw weaponry to try to catch the ninja, and Lee remained on the floor motionless. The group flinched as their own weaponry came flying back to them. Quickly they dodged it, but as they did, they didn't see what was coming next. Millions of needles from above plunged themselves into the young boys and girls and screams were heard. Neji flinched and frowned. "I need to protect you, old man." Please stay," he replied. "I will. It's our new mission." The masked ninja stared at the limp bodies before her. Removing the mask, she frowned. Although she quickly put it back on, as Naruto had gotten up. All 3 powerful ninjas were beaten up pretty badly. Zabuza being the most beaten up. He had tried the silent killing technique a couple of times. But it had failed. His sword didn't leave any fatal wounds, but small ones. He decided to try to take out one right now and lunged his sword towards Anko. Her eyes widened as she felt the sword leave a severe wound onto her stomach. Guy flinched at this and launched a dynamic entry, knocking out Zabuza for a moment. The ninja's heartbeat sped up as she felt that Zabuza was getting injured. She stared at the boy standing up before her and flinched as a strong orange chakra surrounded Naruto. Neji looked in shock at the orange essence of the crystal mirrors, but he had no idea who was emitting it. His chakra was running out from keeping Byakugan during such a thick fog. You hurt Ino-chan. You hurt everyone." A scream then emitted Rom, the 12-year-old, as the form of a Kyuubi hugged his body. In amazing speed he punched the masked ninja, making the mask fall off. Naruto, being out of control, didn't notice the familiar face of Haku before unleashing ever more attacks. Haku did his best to fight back, but whenever he tried to dodge he was still hit with the air pressure from the chakra. Just before Naruto had finally finished off Haku, he finally noticed who it was. Haku. Naruto muttered, the immense chakra disappearing. His body ached as he stood in front of the beaten Haku, who managed to remain standing as well. He trembled. "Why, Haku began wiping the blood from underneath his lip. "I work for a man named Zabuza. The man who was fighting your elders." Naruto turned around, the mist starting to thin again. He flinched as his eyes passed his fellow partners' limp bodies and his eyes finally saw 3 blurs in the middle of battle. As his eyes trailed back he flinched at Ino's limp body. Her body still trembling from the pain. He turned his focus back onto Haku. "Why do you work for a man who kills?" "It's his job." Haku began, a dazed expression on his face, "and I who follows him must help." "Still, you haven't answered my question." He stepped in front of him and his eyes focused on the older one. "Why do you work for such a man?" "Because." His voice was still as soothing as ever, even with the distressed look on his face. "Because he is precious to me." Naruto remembered that phrase and continued to look in front of him, and he gives me a purpose to live. Nachuo's heart twitched and his body stiffened. What? Haku smiled partially at the blonde boy. "I was abandoned as a child. I had no choice actually, since my parents were killed." His smile was a sad one. The aura was extremely depressing. Naruto continued to listen. "We have a special bloodline limit that is not wanted, so I remained on the run just to get away. I had no purpose, I was unwanted." He blinked once, then twice before continuing. "It hurt so much." Naruto remembered the feeling of being unwanted, the emptiness and hurt. But since it went away at a young age he never fully understood it. He continued to stare into Haku's eyes as he continued. "That was until this man who kills came to me. He acknowledged my gift, my bloodline limit, and wanted me. He wanted me to be his, to be his weapon. A slight smile appeared. I finally had a purpose, a reason to go on. It felt good. He coughed out some more blood, his eyes slowly twitching. Now tell me, Naruto. Why do you fight? Naruto continued to stare in front of him. It was as if he and Haku were in a completely different world. He contemplated on why he was there, about his purpose, about why he fought. Nodding, he answered Haku, because I am a ninja. Why did you want to become a ninja? Haku asked quickly, as if he had everything prepared. He was a bit older than Naruto, and he was wise. His views on the world had been corrupted, but not too much to make him evil. He just follows in what he believes in. The way he lived his life, it may be unjust to some, but to him it was satisfying. It was life. To be acknowledged by the village, was Naruto's answer. He clenched his hand into a tight fist and bit his bottom lip. His dream to become Hokage was a strong one. Haku's eyes were calm through the sadness. He stared at Naruto. Then you know how much it hurts to be unwanted. Naruto flinched once more before answering, of course. You're here though, on this mission with many others. Haku looked at Naruto, one eye opened, one eye closed. You told me before that you had someone who was precious to you. His body swayed slightly as the sound of swords and kunai clashing filled the air. Yes, replied Naruto. His left eyebrow rose slightly as he waited for Haku to continue. So you understand why, was the rest of it. Haku was determined and wanted to continue this conversation no matter how much pain he was in. I do, was how Naruto replied. His look softened. You fight, and that's your purpose. To work for him is why you live. Right, Naruto. Now what is your purpose? My purpose. He began closing his eyes. My purpose to protect the ones I care about. I understand. Haku replied, finally falling over. His head turned to face the direction of which Naruto was standing. Looking at his feet, he said, Kill me, Naruto. I am too weak to live on. If I am of no use then there is no reason to go on. Zabuza doesn't need me anymore. I don't want the pain of being unwanted to overwhelm me again. He coughed out some more blood. Sensing the fear and hesitance in Naruto's movements, he spoke up again. Why won't you finish me? This will be my final attack. Anko yelled. My snake would finish you off. The sound of hissing filled the area and Naruto's eyes widened when Haku had disappeared. Zabuza's eyes widened to see the boy in front of him, although it didn't protect him. Haku was still severely his name before falling over. The snake's poison only reached Zabuza and Haku had fainted from the shock and pain. Guy flinched while holding his wound in pain. He stared as the two ninjas who attacked them fall over. Naruto looked in horror, and wondered, no, not wondered. He knew that he was dead. Tisk tisk, a voice came from the side. A short and old man walked towards them. It appears that he wasn't able to finish Tazuna. What a pathetic man, not even able to simply destroy these people. So boss, do we finish the old man hiding behind the kid? The bandit asked. He along with many other bandits laughed in unison. These people look too exhausted to fight. Gato smirked and walked up to the dead body of Zabuza and Haku. He kicked Zabuza's dead body and spit on his face. Naruto's teeth grinded against each other as he started to approach the old man. But before he got there in time, he heard a familiar voice. 1,000 needles of death. Haku cried out in a weakened state. The ice pierced Gato and he screamed in pain. Haku's face seemed emotionless as he punched Gato in the face, sending him flying backwards. Zabuza had awoken, still not dead from the poison. The bandits felt that they were at an advantage and approached the shinobi with wide smirks. Zabuza took his sword and swung it swiftly and quietly, killing all who were at the front. He fell to his knees and coughed out more blood, his eyes closed and his body aching. Haku fell down as well, breathing lightly and wincing every couple of seconds. The rest of the bandits still felt that they were at an advantage and attacked. Inari and the villagers marched onto the bridge. His usual sad face became brave. Grandpa. His mother had told him the story about Naruto and his past. Something that Anko had told the mother. Naruto was a brave person, he believed, and the others were as well. He realized that with all these people, they could finally drive away the one who has been bringing them suffering. The villagers yelled, holding up their weapons of choice, and the bandits' faces turned white. They turned around quickly and run as far as they could. Naru, turned with a small smile and waved slightly at the young boy. Even though they hardly knew each other, Naruto was glad to see a happier boy. The villagers cheered and they marched back triumphantly along with Tsunami and Inari. Chizuna gave them a signal that they would be back in a moment, and luckily they didn't notice the limp bodies of shinobi. "We need to get these out of all of you, Tazen." Began pulling out the ice Senbon along with Neji. Naruto walked up to Haku and Zabuza's dead body and he began to cry. He stared at the two as they lay there contently. But then he backed away as Haku got up. "You're still alive?" Anko asked. "What about?" Zabuza remained silent, and the sound of his breathing did not continue. Naruto continued to cry and he turned to Haku. "What now?" he asked. "Now what will you do?" Haku stared at the one who took care of him. "I'll just stay and die here." "You can't. I have no more reason to live." Haku continued and lay down again. "You have amazing power and talent," Guy began. "Please, if to save a life and to get a new shinobi, come back with us." Haku stared into the sky, a sigh emitting from his mouth. Are you sure you want that?" he asked, his breathing returning to normal. "Yes, Haku," Naruto replied, "you can continue to live on. Please, come back with us." Haku gave a friendly smile as he closed his eyes. "Okay." Neji and Lee stood next to each, smiles on their faces while facing Naruto and Sasuke. The four laughed lightly and Neji acknowledged Naruto's potential. So this proves that you are one of the top of your class." INO smiled slightly. Naruto always worked so hard, he used to be at the bottom of the class. Sasuke smirked at this and Naruto pouted slightly. Rock Lee looked at Naruto with flames burning in his eyes. "Ah, a hard worker is one of the top 3. You my friend have all that it takes to beat down a genius." Naruto's head tilted to the side slightly. "A genius?" Tenten looked at Naruto then shifted her eyes to Neji and Sasuke. "A genius, otherwise known as a prodigy. Like Neji and Sasuke here." Naruto nodded, finally understanding. "Well, of course. I am going to become the Hokage someday." He pumped his fist into the air and then placed his arms on his hips. "I bet I will be strong enough to beat Sasuke and Neji anytime I want." "And me too," yelled Lee, his eyes continuing to burn. "I will beat the Hyuga prodigy even though I cannot use ninjutsu nor genjutsu." INO and Tenten smiled in unison as Naruto and Lee started to have a light-hearted conversation. Sasuke went back to help the senseis and Neji turned away to smirk. "I hardly got to do much here. Naruto and Lee-san, never will you beat a genius like me. It is not in my destiny to lose to a ninjutsu failure and a recovering bottom of the class." Neji continued to smirk as he told himself this but flinched when his sensei launched a dynamic entry his way. Quickly ducking he sighed in relief and found out that everyone was ready. Haku shifted his feet slightly, blushing being around all these people. They were all so nice to him, and no longer had he have to wear that mask. His pale face shone in the sunlight of that new day. He fashioned a dark blue sweater with a black shirt underneath. He wore slightly baggy pants that matched his sweater design-wise, and he wore a bag that was supplied to him by the old man Tazuna. Inside was a second outfit, the same but purple. Along with it was a water bottle and some food. Haku looked down at his legs and the pouch that was attached to his right leg. He shook his leg slightly, hearing the Senbon clashing within. Looking up again, he nearly screamed as Naruto's face was severely close. "Naruto-kun." Haku meeped, backing up a bit. Naruto simply smiled at him and adjusted the bag on his own back. He waved a bit before running to a slightly crying Inari. The rest of the academy students and Team 4 were saying their goodbyes and Haku stood there, ghtly confused yet amused at the sight of a crying Naruto and Inari. "Let's get going," Anko yelled, as the shinobi started walking. Chizuna yelled out the new name of the bridge, Naruto sniffling at the name. "The Naruto Bridge Sasuke muttered, a smirk across his face. "Not too shabby." Haku placed down his things next to the new bed set up at the tiny apartment. He sighed and turned to Naruto. "Sure, training is important. But could you clean up a bit around here?" Naruto finished the rest of his ramen before looking up at Haku. "Sorry. I'll try to clean up." Quickly, he tossed Hi's ramen package into the garbage and dashed around the room picking up you needed things. "Your speed could use some work, Naruto-kun," Haku stated, watching Naruto's footwork. How is your speed compared to those else in your class? Naruto paused from his cleaning moment and thought. Scratching his head slightly he bashfully replied, I'm one of the slower ones in my class. But if I really needed to, my speed is actually pretty good. Remember our fight? Haku sighed and smiled slightly, yeah. He looked around. The place is starting to look better, how about I help out? Naruto nodded swiftly and Haku replied with a laugh. INO finished her shower, not realizing that these kinds of missions can seriously make a girl miss cleaning herself up. After putting her clothes back on, she brushed her hair while staring at herself into the mirror. Man, she began, tying her hair up, I need to become more useful, she sighed continuing to brush her bangs. A knock was heard against the door. INO Heim. Naruto-kun and his friend are outside. He's asking if you'd like to train. INO sighed once more, and right after I cleaned myself up, she muttered to herself, finally putting down the brush. Opening the door to meet with her father she smiled, okay then, just wait like 2 minutes and I'll be down. Inoichi nodded and left to tell the boys. Naruto kicked some of the dirt as he awaited, his hood on. Hakuin flinched, as the older man known as INO's father stood before them again. She'll be down in a moment, was his reply to Naruto's earlier question. Haku looked as Naruto happily nodded. Wait, tell me again. Is she your girlfriend? Haku asked almost laughing as Naruto turned pink. No she isn't, Naruto replied turning to Haku. He set down his hood and his pink face turned back to its normal colors. Adjusting his headband he spoke again, we're just really close friends. Your precious person? Haku asked. Of course. The door swung open again and was closed shut. INO greeted them happily, Naruto replying and Haku bowing. Did you just take a shower INO-chan? Naruto asked. Haku rose his eyebrow looking at Naruto. What? Yeah Naruto-kun, she replied, how did you know? Naruto smirked slightly before pointing to his nose, I can smell your shampoo very distinctly. INO blushed slightly, I see. Haku laughed lightly before holding up 2 sets of weights before the 2 younger shinobi. I want you guys to start wearing these. Naruto's eyebrow rose and INO slouched over with a pout. Haku smirked slightly, now you guys want to become stronger right? They responded with a nod and Haku made them hold their weights. I don't mean to be cruel or anything, but these will help improve your speed. Naruto and INO nodded determined, attaching the weights to their arms and legs. INO almost fell to the floor and Naruto dropped instantly, but he quickly recovered letting out a combo of kicks and punches. INO moved around a bit, waving around her arms and jogging on the spot. I will increase them as soon as you get used to the earlier set. Now, let's head to the training grounds, I'll just watch you guys do your normal training. Naruto did his usual, he threw kunai at targets. Did some flips and combinations in the air pretending to avoid attacks. INO practiced her aim with weapons and her Shintenshin no Jutsu. Haku noticed that there was slight strain in both of them as they were trying to get used to the weights. Naruto began to complain about how he couldn't jump as high as he wanted to because of the weights and INO complained about her aim decreasing. Haku just ignored them and decided to look up at the sky. But he quickly got up as 4 familiar figures came by. Dynamic entry. Guy yelled heading towards Naruto. Naruto T. Earned to see him coming and ducked as quickly as he could. Although the shock caused him to fall over instantly, Tenten quickly headed over to see INO, and Lee went to help Naruto up. Neji ignored them and went to start his own training. Guy turned and smiled widely as the young shinobi mingled with each other. His smile dropped when he spotted Haku. Hello there Guy-san, Haku greeted, bowing before the spandex-suited Junin. Guy stopped the bow and made Haku stand up properly. Haku, it's perfectly fine, there is no need to be so formal, Guy replied, a slight smile returning to his face. How are you bearing? I'm perfectly fine, thank you Guy-san, was Haku's reply. Zabuza-san is gone, and I have finished my grieving. I cannot allow his death to hold me down. I have a new purpose in life. Guy tilted his head. What is it? Naruto-kun, Haku simply replied with a sweet smile. I want to help him train to accomplish his dream and to continue protecting his precious person. I see. Guy lifted his head down and pondered. They're getting assigned to their teams tomorrow right? I think Naruto-kun mentioned something like that. Guy gave Haku the nice guy pose. I vow that my team will cooperate with whatever team Naruto gets in and we will help train them as well. I'm sure their assigned sensei has some techniques up his or her sleeve as well. Naruto is lucky to have someone like you guys-san. Haku smiled and sat back down to watch the shinobi continue their training. He's lucky to have someone like you as well, Guy replied, and those weights that you put on Naruto. They're heavier than the ones INO has. He's having more trouble than her as well. Do you really think he'll be able to handle them? You should see the condition of his room, Haku stated. Naruto-kun trains a lot. Even ask INO. He brushed away some of his own hair before glancing at INO training her aim with Tenten. He worked really hard to become the top of his class. NK goodness he had someone like INO to keep him in form. Otherwise I bet you he'd be at the bottom of his class. You sure seem to know a lot about the boy, Guy replied. Yeah, he does talk to me you know. We're becoming good friends. That's good. Yeah, congratulations new genin. Settle down. You girls leave Sasuke alone. Iruka yelled, the fangirls pouting in response. INO laughed, lightly at her friend Sakura who simply walked back to her spot next to INO. You'll get him eventually Sakura-chan, Naruto stated, don't just be one of his fangirls though. Hopefully you'll be put on his team, Choji said. Finishing his package of chips, I don't care what team I get to be on. I hope I get at least one of you guys though. Yeah, as five are friends forever, Naruto cheered, smiling at all of his friends. He twitched slightly and INO took that moment to slap Shikamaru. What? He shouted getting up from his nap. You have any preference for teams? Nah, Shikamaru replied to INO. He placed his head on his desk and looked at his teacher. He's going to read the teams now. Team 7, Sensei Kakashi-sama, students, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Inuzuka Kiba. Team 8, Sensei Kurenai-sama, students, Hyuga Hinata, Nara Shikamaru, Akamaiki Choji. Team 6, Sensei Anko-sama, students, Yamanaka INO, Uzumaki Naruto, and Aburame Shino. Okay kids, you must meet with your sensei in 5 minutes. Before you leave class pick up the location of your sensei from me. Naruto blinked once, then twice before smiling widely. He turned to INO and she smiled back at him. Looking around the class he looked for Bug Boy, otherwise known as Aburame Shino. Shino turned to Naruto and nodded simply and Naruto gave him a thumbs up in return. Great, my team will be peaceful for sure, Shikamaru stated. Leaning back on his chair. Yosh, Shikamaru is on my team. Oh my god, Sasuke-kun is on my team. Sakura muttered to herself. INO gave her a pat on the back and everyone began to run out of the room. Curious to meet with their sensei. Hello again kids, greeted a familiar purple-haired figure. Naruto walked side by side with INO, Shino walking behind them. Naruto smirked at his new sensei and INO waved politely. Shino remained silent. Before trailing his eyes over to Anko he coughed slightly. Anko scanned her new genin students, then held up 3 wind chimes. A purple one, an orange one and a gray one. The 3 stared at them and listened carefully as the breeze allowed them to make noise. Anko smirked as she held up her other hand and formed a gesture. I want you to bring these back to me within 3 hours, she said as they disappeared. Naruto, you get the orange one, INO you get the purple one, and Shino, the gray one. Wait, no introductions. He lted his head in confusion and continued, no preparation. Naruto began questioning, waving his arms around. Wait, what is this supposed to do for us? INO asked, scanning the area. Shit, is this some sort of test? Shino nodded at INO. Yes, he couldn't seem to find its connection. How is this beneficial? Well kids, Anko began, you'll have to see for yourselves. Wait, Naruto yelled, but Anko disappeared. And so did the rest of his fellow genin. He took in his surroundings, he swore he was in a different area. Sniffing the air, he bit his lip for he didn't recognize the scent at all. Where the hell am I? The area started to enclose on him. His breathing quickened, his hair blew with the wind. He began to scream as he was unable to see. Kai, he finally yelled, and the area vanished. He panted, holding his throat with one hand and his other hand holding his heart. Looking around, he was in the training area once more. His ears began to twitch as well, the chime. Towards the correct area. He ran and ran until he finally spotted it, but it disappeared. Shit, not again. He formed the tiger seal once more, but a kick flew from out of nowhere. What the? With his eyes slightly hazed, he looked ahead of him. There was a familiar green spandex wearing, fish-eyed genin. Naruto-kun, Lee muttered, his hair somehow falling to his face. Naruto looked above to see rain pouring down. But looking at himself, he felt it was impossible, he wasn't getting wet. INO bit her lip, she couldn't find the wind chime. She jumped from tree to tree looking for the correct color. All she saw was green. She decided to stop, hearing but only her own heartbeat along with the slight wind. Looking around, she decided that there was no traps, so she began to focus. Closing her eyes, she took in her surroundings. It was at this time that she wished her hearing was as good as Naruto's. There, she muttered to herself, before continuing on. Damn it, 1 hour has already passed. She kept on jumping, tree branch to tree branch until the trees disappeared and she met with a large snake. Instead of screaming, like she wanted to, she pulled out a kunai and threw it at the snake. It exploded to her surprise and she fell to the floor. Looking above her, she spotted a familiar cloaked genin. Shino, surrounded by his bugs, picked her up from the ground. You okay? He asked as he searched the grounds. She doesn't seem to have found her own chime as well, he thought to himself. She nodded and looked around as well. The area seemed calm again and the wind blew slightly. Shino turned to his new teammate and asked, You okay enough to finish looking for your chime? INO looked at him, his sunglasses blocking his eyes, and his large hair blew in the wind. You couldn't really see his face, but his eyebrows and sunglasses seemed to be enough. Finally INO answered, Yes, thanks a lot Shino. She smiled at him and he waved before continuing off. He hasn't found his own chime either, she thought to herself. Turning, she spotted her chime once more, and in delight she grabbed it. With it INO began to walk, until she spotted her best friend Naruto. Finding nothing street range with the chime, she placed it inside her kunai pouch and ran to him to see if he needed help. Naruto stared at Lee, he hadn't moved at all since he made his appearance. 30 damn minutes of staring at him, Naruto thought as he felt sweat drip down his forehead. Carefully, he pulled out a kunai and flung it at Lee, purposely missing and making it pass by his cheek. The rain ceased and Lee looked directly at Naruto again. Naruto flinched a bit, feeling some sort of a strange aura. Naruto-kun, he muttered, you don't trust that I have the ability to dodge that kunai of yours? His face seemed like it was under stress. It wasn't an expression Naruto normally saw on him. Naruto flinched fully at the sharpness in Lee's voice. He backed up a bit as Lee's expression changed. His fuzzy brows buried themselves deeper and anger was expressed through his eyes. Don't you trust in the strength of your friend? He questioned, moving closer and closer to Naruto. With this, Lee pulled out the orange chime that Naruto had to obtain. Dangling it from his fingers, he looked at Naruto, waiting for an answer. I trust your strength, Lee, I just don't want to accidentally hurt you. Naruto spoke the truth. What is he getting at? Naruto wondered. He was concerned that he might accidentally poke Lee's eyes out. I know you're powerful, and probably stronger than me, but... Stop it, Naruto-kun, Lee intruded, if you trust me. You must know that I will not let an attack from my own teammate come into contact with me. He seemed to have calmed down a bit as he continued staring into Naruto's eyes. If we are truly friends, we must trust in each other's abilities and in each other's movement. He moved closer and closer before being only but a meter before Naruto. When you work as a team, you formulate plans and depend on each other's abilities. If you doubt them and take their capabilities under concern, things will fall apart. You understand? Naruto was still slightly scared, with a determined look on his face. He tried to understand. Naruto looked at Lee intensely. He swore that he knew these things already, but then again, this whole time he was concerned about hitting Lee. Rock Lee was stronger than him. That's for sure, but... Crash! Shino looked up from the spot he was on. He had finally found his gray chime. He remembered seeing Naruto fighting with a tree, but that was a genjutsu which Naruto should be able to dispel. He also helped out INO earlier from a kunai with an explosive tag which she set up to explode. So far his troubles were two genjutsu which he dispelled with Kai the first time and somehow escaped the second time. He promised to himself from that genjutsu to be more open to his teammates. Turning around he heard a crash noise. A bug of his flew over to his hand and he simply nodded his head. Ninpu. Shuiro Kauchu, he muttered. It was a secret technique that tracks down his scarlet beetles. Within his arsenal of insects are 15 scarlet beetles. They have a special chakra flow that, with this technique, only he can see. At the beginning of this operation he had planted it on Naruto and INO in case. Now with his new vision he looked at his surroundings and found 2 scarlet beetles outside of the ones in his own body. With this he began to run towards them, just to check out the situation. The illusion of Rock Lee had disappeared. Naruto swiped the orange chime and thought about the words he spoke. He, INO and Shino were going to be a team, and in their more dangerous missions. They'll have to depend on each other's capabilities, and there is no room for doubt. Naruto-kun, INO shouted from the side. Naruto turned to her with a smile and walked to her slowly. But then the ground cracked and the exact same snake that INO saw earlier appeared. Shino appeared from amongst the trees and gazed at the giant snake as well. INO, biting her lip, pulled out a shuriken and yelled for them to back away. As soon as the shuriken came into contact with the snake, it stayed there. They looked up as it hissed in slight pain. Naruto, INO and Shino looked at each other and nodded, all of them jumping onto the same tree branch. Naruto-kun, do you hear anything else that's near? INO asked. Shino looked as Naruto's ear twitched and he himself concentrated as well. All I hear is what I believe is Anko-sensei eating dango, Naru. To replied, sniffling a little bit of laughter. Shino opened his eyes and complimented Naruto on his good hearing. Incoming, INO yelled as the snake's tail crashed into the tree, splitting it into pieces. The genin looked at each other for a plan and Shino simply let his bugs out. Guy, I need for you to trust me. Just keep an eye out and keep this snake busy, Shino yelled among the hissing. Naruto and INO looked at each other and nodded. Shino hid himself among the trees and started forming numerous hand symbols, nin, pu, ki, ba, ku. Naruto jumped up high as well as INO, not yet reaching eye level with the snake. With his right arm Naruto pulled INO upwards and launched her at the snake's head. Once she landed she pulled out 2 kunai, 1 for each hand. Jumping up once more dodged the snake's tongue and she smirked when she saw Naruto launch 2 shuriken at its tongue. As it hissed in pain she launched her 2 kunai into each of the snake's eyes and jumped down to where Naruto was. With this, the snake started moving around randomly. INO handled the front making sure the snake didn't take down a lot of nature and Naruto controlled the tail side. Shino finished off his sequence of hand signs and his bugs exited his sleeves, Kauchu. INO and Naruto saw all the bugs surround the snake. In unison Naruto and INO jumped to the tree where Shino was and watched as the bugs, loaded with chakra, exploded once in contact with the snake. INO was slightly concerned about her clothing, and Naruto craved to see the snake's innards. But bugs to protect his teammates. Where the snake was, Anko appeared. Her smirk was wider than usual, and from the corner of her mouth was a stick that probably held what used to be dango. Congratulations guys, she signaled them to come closer. You are now officially genin. INO and Naruto's mouth hung over their chin. Shino simply nodded and Naruto wanted to yell, what? You mean if we didn't get these chimes we would have to have gone back to the academy? Wow, I'm glad I made it. INO muttered, letting out a sigh of relief. Naruto, INO, and Shino, you have all proved to me that you can work together, and that you have acceptable abilities. Under me, your Sensei Anko, you will become excellent genin. Naruto and INO's expressions turned back to normal and Shino nodded once more. Now, let's introduce Orsilves. Anko had made them walk over to a public park in Konoha. They sat on the grass and Anko stood before them. Now, use this as an example. With this she cleared her throat. I am Mitarashi Anko, Sensei of Team 6. My students are Aburame Shino, Uzumaki Naruto and Yamanaka INO. My favorite food is dango. My hobbies are disciplining misbehaved children, training with my genin students and fooling around when I'm not working. My dream is to be an amazing shinobi to represent our village and to keep my team safe. I dislike a certain man, and as extra, I don't remember much of my childhood. Naruto. INO and Shino blinked once. And then twice in unison. Well, she's quite the interesting person, INO thought. I wonder how she'll train us, thought Naruto. Who is this certain man? Did he have a connection with her childhood? Shino thought. Now you three go, Anko announced. INO muttered. I'll go first, Naruto shouted. INO sunk in her spot and let out a sigh. I am Uzumaki Naruto, genin student of Anko of Team 6. My favorite food is ramen, and my hobbies are training, hanging out with my friends, hanging out at the Ichiraku ramen stand, and sleeping. My dream is to become Hokage and be acknowledged of my potential. I dislike people who think they're too good just because the air genius is Kufsasuka, and as extra. Well, INO L. Reed knows, and you Anko sensei probably, but I hate the Kyuubi sealed within me. Quote. Anko paused and looked over at Naruto. Yes, I already knew that. She then turned to Shino, who turned to Naruto. My parents always told me to stay away from you when I was a child. And I never knew why. I'm sorry that so many people probably neglected you just because of the Kyuubi. Shino spoke and Naruto wanted to cry. Shino was very understanding. You hold the Kyuubi within you, right? That means that you truly are a hero. I hope that you become Hokage one day. Thanks, Shino. Naruto muttered, wiping away some of his tears. Ah, Shino, you are so understanding, INO said. Most people would have just gotten scared or began to hate Naruto. But I guess Shino isn't most people, INO. Anko asked with a smirk. Now it's my turn, INO said. My name is Yamanaka INO, genin student of Anko of Team 6. My favorite food is ramen now as well, and my hobbies are training my clan's special techniques, hanging out with my friends, and spending time on my flower garden. My dream is to become the top kunoichi of the village and to learn some medical jutsu to help my teammates. I dislike people who hate Naruto just because of the Kyuubi, and as extra, I'm not one of Sasuke's fangirls. The Uchiha. Oh yes, you weren't all over him at the mission, Anko muttered, remembering the Wave Country mission. Now, it's my turn, Shino began. My name is Aburame Shino, genin student of Anko of Team 6. My favorite food is rice, and my hobbies are training with my insects, sitting in a tree and listening to music. My dream is to master my clan's techniques and to become an amazing shinobi. I dislike those who don't treat insects right and those that judge people by their appearance, and as extra, I usually randomly walk around when I don't feel like training. Anko stared at her three genin students, and the genin students stared at their sensei. Tomorrow is our first training session, then a mission. Be prepared, and with that she disappeared. Want to come with Naruto and I to get ramen, Shino? INO asked. Shino simply nodded and the three walked over to Ichiraku. Yaso, she pretty much screamed and ran for it, Shino replied to INO's question. His cheeks continued to flush red and Naruto's smile widened. Well, to tell the truth, and from experience, most girls are scared a hell lot out of bugs. Me as well. But you, Shino, your bugs are an exception. She finished the last of her ramen and Naruto handed her a napkin so she could wipe off her face. She had just asked the boy about dating. She, knowing Naruto for so long, knew that he wasn't really interested in anyone. Which in a way was good and bad. Shino had just explained the last part of his date. Unfortunately, a bug crawled from his neck by accident as they hugged. Your bugs are cool though, Naruto commented. Asking the old man for another bowl, you'll find a girl who'll think that too. In a matter of seconds the bowl disappeared and with noodles sticking out from his mouth he said, besides, we're only 12, we have quite the long time. I myself am content with my friends and being a genin. Shino nodded at Naruto before finishing up his own bowl. He turned to INO, have you ever been on a date? Before INO was to reply, Naruto interrupted. She's been asked millions of times, rejected them all too. They just had to be on the times that we needed to train or spend time together. I insisted for her to go, but she didn't want to. Shino nodded at Naruto's response, a simple bug crawling on his cheek. I'd expect for her to be asked a lot. She's popular at school and very attractive. He showed no trace of blushing and his face was very serious. INO blushed at this. Why, thank you, Shino. Naruto smiled widely and nodded. He glanced at her quickly before responding with his own opinion. There's no one prettier than INO, and no kunoichi more skilled than she. He looked up at the old man and took out his chubby frog wallet. Letting out a sigh, he paid the man. Shino adding some of his own money as well as INO. Don't pout, Naruto, INO said, blushing at his earlier comment. You're the one who said we pay for as much as we eat, and you're the one who decided to eat like 7 bowls of ramen. She almost laughed at Naruto's response but simply hopped off her own chair, adjusting her hair just a bit. I ate only 2, Shino added, getting off his chair also, and INO as well. Shino's eyebrow rose. How big is your appetite anyways? Naruto tilted his head and INO giggled at how clueless Naruto was. The next day, Naruto went to visit Old Man Hokage. His headband hung around his neck and his sweater was tied around his waist. He leant his head against his arms and he smiled contentedly at the Hokage. The Hokage looked at him with a calm face and watched Naruto's smile grow wider. Why, hello there, Naruto, Sarutobi greeted, a smile on his face as well. Letting down the papers in his hand, he offered Naruto to stand in front of his desk. Seeing the necklace he gave Naruto shimmering on his neck, he smiled even wider. Now what gives me the honor of your presence? Naruto cleared his throat, shifting his feet once more. Rubbing underneath his nose, he looked at the Hokage and he spoke. I heard that the D-ranked missions are easy. Ibeo, will you be giving our team those? Sarutobi nodded. Of course, Naruto. Knowing Naruto, he expected that question actually. Naruto sighed and pouted, but G-san, we may have had a little bit of trouble at the Zabuza mission, but it seemed more like a B-era mission. Must we seriously do all these D-ranked missions? His necklace swung back and forth as Naruto continued to show how much he really wanted to do a harder mission. Sarutobi cleared his throat and adjusted his awesome Hokage's hat. The D-ranked missions are meant for the genin. After hearing him start, Naruto tilted his head and listened attentively. The Hokage co-rookies to learn responsibility, teamwork, and to learn dedication. Naruto nodded at all of this and continued looking at the Hokage with hope. I'll make a deal. How about you only do 5 D-ranked missions and then I'll send you on a C-ranked mission to see how it goes. From that I'll decide whether to let your team do C-ranked mission instead of D. Then again, I must speak with your sensei. Don't worry, Naruto responded with a smirk. Brushing away the hair from his face, he turned his head and smirked as a knock was heard. There she is. The Hokage scratched his chin and yelled for the knocking unknown to enter. Impressive, was his reaction as Anko came walking in. I could hear her footsteps, and she smells of dango, Naruto replied smirking. Now I'll be off to meet with Inohime. Sarutobi nodded at Naruto and Anko looked at him. What just happened? Naruto rolled around in the lush and green grass. The wind blew through his hair and a smile appeared once more on his features. He waited patiently for 5 minutes, turning his head he watched the river flow. Footsteps were heard, and blonde hair was the first thing he saw as he got up. Hey Ino-chan, Naruto said, greeting his friend. The wind added the effect of his hair swaying to the side along with hers. Hey Naruto-kun, Ino greeted, giving him a hug. Shino showed me his ladybug collection. I swear I used to hate them, but after his lecture, I think that they're pretty cool. She put her hand on her hip, being proud of herself. Naruto smirked, thinking of something smart to say. Did he threaten you? Naruto joked. Come on, he continued, seeing her pout slightly. Be honest. The last time a ladybug landed on you, you ran in circles, pulled the ladybug off yourself. She slapped him lewdly. You mean Baka? She replied, blushing slightly, red from embarrassment. I can't believe you remember that. Hey, Naruto responded, checking if his weights were on properly. I remember a lot of things, Ino. Even the things that you think are insignificant. I remember when I first beat you with these weights on, she commented, adjusting her own, then won 5 times afterwards in a row. That actually happened, and with that he fell over from a punch. I was joking, Ino-chan. He yelled in defense before she launched another one. She shook her head at him as the steam ran cool. Putting herself in her usually position and taking in 3 calm breaths, she looked at him intensely with the thought of winning. I'll win again after your 7 win streak. Punching the air and throwing 3 teasing kunai, she pinned Naruto to a tree. Hey, we haven't even started yet. He panicked, kicking the air as he struggled on the tree. Shino at the top of the tree smirked at him through his collar, which Naruto couldn't see. Freeing himself, Naruto smiled widely and put himself in his own usual position. All win. Again INO. I face winner. Shino called out from the tree, I want to see if I can beat you guys again. Again, came a familiar adult woman's voice, you've all fought each other and won. Yeah, came the reply in unison. Shino's won the most though, Naruto answered, scratching his head. It's because we don't know his abilities as much as each other's. INO answered, defending her pride. Sure, Anko teased. Looking at her team laugh lightly at themselves, she pulled out a request sheet. Here is your first D mission, guys. The three stared at her with excitement. A mission. Naruto yelled, and so loud that the birds near them flew away. INO smacked him square in the head and Shino rose his eyebrow. Oh, a mission. AD rank mission. What are we doing? What are we doing? Naruto just couldn't keep still. He jumped up and down and Shino and INO decided to back away just a bit. Anko stuck out her tongue at Naruto. Yeah, AD rank mission. Folding up the piece of paper, the two others came closer as the air grew tense. Okay guys. For this first mission, you will. Naruto looked at her intensely. D rank were supposed to be easy and boring. With the way she was talking to them, this had ought to be serious. For this mission you will be returning a kid's kite. And in unison the three kids fell over and paradise was interrupted. Naruto sighed as his cage Bunshin stood on his shoulder to get the kite. And the kid who lost it, as he attempted to get the kite himself. Shino was positioned at the middle of the tree to make sure that the kid gets down Naruto and brings the kite safely, while INO stood at the base in case the kid falls over. Anko stood on the side seeing how they worked together. She smirked as Naruto's clones muttered little ouches as the kid stepped on their faces and the kite nearly poked their eyes out. Okay Naruto, brace yourself, this is almost done, INO called out, stifling her laughter. Now normally Naruto's clones and himself would just be irritated, and why couldn't he just save him by himself? The problem, my friends, is that the kid was quite the fatty, even bigger than the author herself. Oh. Shino twitched as one of Naruto's clones disappeared when the kid pulled on its hair, but as he caught the kid, another Naruto clone appeared. Good job Naruto, you should train yourself so your clones will last longer. But your timing is pretty good. Naruto nodded at Shino and smiled. Good reflexes. If you didn't catch the kid then he'd probably fall over. Hello, Naruto. My job is to catch the kid. INO yelled, temple throbbing slightly. Why? You don't think I can catch this kid? Oh no, that's not what I meant, INO. Don't you think that it's easier on the kid if he was caught here? He asked, hoping his response was good enough. Also, he might as well crush her. But then again, with her strength I should simply trust her. Okay guys, he's almost done. Anko yelled, laughing lightly afterwards. How are you doing, little Caillou? She yelled. These guys a big help or what? Caillou nodded with a slight blush on his face from excitement. It's funny watching this guy. His clones are so cool. I want to be a ninja when I grow up. His mother, who was standing beside Anko, shook her head. No. You don't need that. We're pretty rich and your father has his own 2 personal ninjas for protection. And at that moment INO and Naruto carefully put down Caillou, with him dropping his kite and running to his mommy. But mom, he wind the 3 genin regrouping beside Anko as he did. Ninjas are so cool. Yes, they are, Caillou-chan, but it's a dangerous job. She explained, patting his head ever so gently. Caillou hugged his mom and then ran to the 3 genin. Mom is right, I guess. It's a dangerous job, right? The 3 nodded, but Naruto kneeled before the kid so he was in eye contact. You, funny clone person. What's your name? Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. Future Hokage kid. Naruto exclaimed happily, patting the kid on his head as well. It's cool how you want to become a ninja, but it's a very dangerous job. Your mom would be very worried every single day of your life. Caillou nodded at Naruto. That's true. Hokage, you say? Isn't that supposed to be the head ninja, the most powerful one in the village who protects us all? You know your stuff, Anko commented, smirking slightly. That's true. If you're going to become the Hokage, then stay alive, become stronger, Caillou commented, pulling out something from his pocket. Wear this bracelet, please. He exclaimed, holding out a black bracelet with a kite charm. Remember me when you're Hokage, and don't die. With that he ran to his mommy, who thanked them and started walking away. INO, Shino and Naruto all looked at the bracelet. Anko yawning and holding another request paper. Why are you all staring at it? His mom probably bought it for him randomly and as a thanks the kid wanted to give it to you, no surprise. Now, for another mission. Don't die Naruto began saying, making sure the bracelet was on tight enough. I promise, to that kid, that I won't die until I have at least become Hokage. Yeah, that's the spirit, woohoo, now let's complete these other D-ranked missions so fun, Anko complained waving the paper around Naruto's face. Fun as in fighting bandits? Shino asked, eyebrow raised. Arms crossed, come on, C-ranked missions aren't that much better than D-ranked. INO and Naruto nodded, even though I did ask the old man for C-ranked, I know we can't have any really fun unless it's a B-ranked and higher. Before continuing on, Naruto got a bump on his head. Holding onto it with both hands he growled and looked at his sensei. What the hell was that for? Kid, C-ranked can always be a surprise. Sometimes they are boring, but believe me, some people are too poor to afford higher ranked missions, so they make the missions seem like a D-ranked or a C-ranked so they will get rid of the problem and won't have to pay too much, Anko explained as they walked towards wherever their next D-ranked mission was. Naruto tilted his head slightly, his necklace tilting over as well. Well, what are the chances of that? He asked, putting his arms behind his head. Pretty high now, Shino said. My father told me about this. Several places are in danger, and they're too poor. The Hokage is way busier now. INO looked at Shino with curiosity, so the Hokage knows that some could be higher ranked. Wouldn't that mean that he has to stop Genin from taking missions? No, Anko replied, stopping over a field of weeds. He's busy because of the feuds in a lot of places in the Fire Country and others. He can't really tell whether a mission is dangerous or not. You know that the mission is altered once you meet with that person. All of us senseis are reading the descriptions carefully in case of potential changes. Then why haven't you just given us a harder mission yet? Naruto asked, slightly pouting. He rose his hand to scratch behind his head and Anko let out a small sigh towards him. You three are Genin. I may be more skilled than most Junin, but that doesn't make things go by smoothly. I'll keep on getting us the simpler missions seeing how you three cooperate, and I want you three to continue training on your own and with me. Tomorrow we'll have a quick training session, that along with what I see today will show me whether you're ready for a harder mission. The three glanced at each other for a second or two, then looking in different directions. They faced their sensei and nodded their heads. Her response was a little smirk, and told them to get to clearing the field of weeds. And so the day continued. They went through 4 other D-ranked missions. Getting all of a woman's groceries. Returning a lost bird. Playing with a family's 2 children and entertaining a family of 8. Naruto wiped the sweat off his forehead before he settled himself down on the grass. It was night and the sensei had already parted her ways with them. Nibbling on the dango Anko bought for him and his fellow Genin, he panted. I can't believe that kid wanted me to juggle my weights while running in circles as fast as I can. I almost tripped like 6 times. Shino let out a heavy sigh after nibbling on his own dango. I had to do bug art. What a disgrace, he said as his bugs made a frowning face in the sky. As they returned into his coat the wind blew again, hair swaying to the side. Shino sat himself upon a stump and INO lay herself on the grass with her head resting on Naruto's stomach. I had to do many acrobatic things. And the guys suggested other things, but I slapped them in the face. INO commented, getting herself comfortable on the grass and facing her fellow teammates. They looked at each other, finishing their dango then letting out a sigh. Oh man, I wonder what Anko-sensei has in store for us tomorrow. INO added, closing her eyes. Maybe we can go on our first more than one day mission as Team 6. That sounds like fun. Shino and Naruto nodded in agreement and the day ended with them going into their respectful homes and sleeping. Naruto awoke early that day and made a quick stop at Ichiraku Ramen, making sure that he got himself a good ramen breakfast before whatever his sensei had in store for them. Untying the sweater from around his waist, he quickly put it on and ran towards the regular training spot. Surprisingly, not even Shino was there. Looking at the nearby sundial he nearly fell over. What the? My clock in my room is wrong. I woke up 1 hour more than I was supposed to. No wonder why the old man at the Ichiraku stand was annoyed at my presence. Man, I'm lucky it was open at all. He decided to lean against the nearby stump and closed his eyes. In a matter of 5 minutes he felt a weight on his shoulder. He spoke softly and turned his head to see familiar blonde hair. Smiling, he rested his head on hers. What brings you here this early? He asked as she turned to him. I saw you, so I thought my clock was wrong and I didn't want to be late. But now that I saw the sundial I got pissed because I woke up earlier for nothing, she muttered, closing her eyes. You baka. Naruto laughed slightly, a yawn following afterwards. Gomen tt ibeo, was his response as she fell asleep on his shoulder. Anko met up with Shino as she walked towards the training area. This, my friends, is an hour and 20 minutes after the two blondes fell asleep. Finally, in the main area, Shino couldn't help but smile at the sight her saw. Naruto was lying on the floor next to the stump and INO was in his arms. Anko was slightly annoyed. You two, wake up. INO was the first to awake. Looking at where she was, she felt her cheeks go red. Shooting herself up instantly, she continued to blush as she saw a smirking Anko and a smiling Shino. Sorry, she muttered, sighing. She turned to the peacefully sleeping Naruto, who was, until that moment, smiling. At first he twitched. Turning over, he stirred slightly until Anko launched a kunai near his face. Getting up, he threw a kunai as well, almost hitting Anko. You brat, she yelled, and they went into a chasing frenzy around the stump. INO greeted Shino as her blush faded and Shino simply nodded at her. Finally Naruto stopped running and had a kunai stuck in his butt. Sighing, he stood beside Shino and looked at Anko for instructions. Okay guys, quick training. Let's see how you can adapt to the environment. First, I'll give you each 60 pounds of weight for your feet and 15 pounds for your arms. I want you to run a lap, then from their run to me, throwing them their weights. They struggled a bit to secure it on. She stood upon the stump, touching closely to how they moved. Now Naruto and INO had additional weights. But it didn't really seem like it since they were pretty used to the other ones. Shino didn't seem to have too much of a problem. He stood well and his walking was only a little unstable. The expression on his face constantly changed though. He worked hard and so did the others. Look, I could do this easily, Naruto exclaimed, running as fast as he could. Unfortunately he tripped over a rock. These weights hurt, he muttered, attempting to get up. Baka, INO muttered, offering to help him up. Don't rush, or you'll trip and fall. Focus on completing the task, not showing off, and with that she got him up and started to jog towards the end. Naruto watched go and his eye twitched at how she was doing. She was going a little slow, but there was no showing struggling or pressure. Shino waved at him as he passed by. Naruto began to run as well, eventually catching up with Shino. How are you dealing with this, Naruto? Shino asked, panting just slightly. I'm doing okay myself, but INO, she's something different with this. I know she's got amazing strength, which I almost doubted. Myself, I'm doing well. But my arms are aching slightly from falling over. I'm thankful that INO helped me up. Shino nodded at this and got a bit ahead of Naruto. It's good though. We need to stick together and make sure no one is too behind. Hearing this, INO turned around. Speaking of behind, she yelled, sticking out her tongue afterwards. You two are slow. Come on, we're almost there. She continued to tease, which got Naruto kept on trying to slowly increase his pace. Naruto, he sprinted and ran past INO and made it to the end. Aha, he exclaimed, about to laugh at her. But he held onto his arm for it was throbbing. Oh. Crap. And he fell over. Anko sighed and lowered herself to inspect Naruto. Removing the weights that she gave to him from his arms, she checked his face. He's sleeping, she muttered, eyebrow twitching. Wake up, she yelled, and he got up quickly. But he winced at the pain in his arm and frowned. INO and Shino came afterwards and removed the weights from their arms as well. Anko turned to the two. Keep the leg weights, it increases your speed. Shino and INO simply nodded and checked on Naruto, who continued to wince. See, Baka, that's what you get for rushing, INO commented, wrapping it up with a bandage. Shino simply shook his head and Anko prepared herself to announce something. Okay guys, I believe this is enough training. If we survive this mission, and come out pretty good, we'll continue taking C ranked, she explained, holding the document with their mission details. The three looked at her for details and she gave them. So here's the thing, a girl, claimed to be named Shihiro Mizuo. She is about your age and needs you to bring her back to her village. That village is the Sand Village. Now our relationship with them should be pretty strong, but no one knows for sure except for the Hokage. I expect something major here because we're going there, and I believe that Mizuo is the name of an important priestess. Akunoichi won for that. She probably used a jutsu to make her look younger, but that's just my theory. Don't be disappointed if it isn't the way that I thought it would be. Hi, they all responded in unison. Okay, you have the rest of the day to train. I have some work to attend, so get ready, we meet at the gates tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. With a smile and a salute she departed. Yeah. Wow, Naruto exclaimed as he, Shino and Ino walked towards another training ground, our first C-ranked mission. Ino couldn't help but smile at her comrade. Shino nodded at Naruto and began to speak. As the day ends, I'd like to face you, Naruto, in a little sparring match. Ino looked at Shino with surprise and let out a slight sigh. I was hoping to go home after jogging 2 laps with these new weights. Then getting some rest, Ino muttered. Naruto looked at her. Just because we're training doesn't mean that you have to stay back. Naruto replied, smirking. Ino-chan doesn't like going home alone. He joked. Ino rolled her eyes and Shino just stared. Stay, Ino. You can face the winner. Shino suggested, getting in between the two. It's good to get training before our mission. Then you can return home to pack up and for rest. Naruto nodded and insisted that Ino follow Shino's plan. She simply nodded and the 3 genin continued towards the designated area. Okay, Shino. Naruto began, holding a stance. I won't let you win that easily. Shino nodded, not responding any words. Nodding, he signaled them to begin and they both launched a shuriken at each other. In unison, they dodged it, but they went into separate directions. Ayano watched with intense eyes as the genin battled. Flipping over backwards, Shino let out 2 smoke bombs and hid himself into the tree. Naruto's senses being blocked, her frantically looked around the smoke-filled area. Jumping as high as he could, he landed into the tree only to see an exploding tag beside him. Damn, he mewed before it exploded along with the tree. Coughing, he covered his mouth and took in his surroundings again. Focusing, he threw shuriken all around him to then see a log. What the? He yelled, staring at the log. That was close. Shino came from behind and launched a punch towards Naruto. As a reflex, Naruto ducked and kicked Shino's legs, knocking him down. Before Shino was able to get back up, he pinned him down with 3 kunai and pointed one towards his face. I win. Naruto muttered, but gasped as Shino's body turned into bugs. With eyes wide open, he felt a punch from the back at his head. Groaning in pain, he turned around as quickly as possible to punch him back. Gah! Shino yelled as that Naruto turned into a log. Impossible, he can't be that good. Turning around, he felt an explosion go off near his face. Flying backwards, he landed hard on the grass. Naruto showed up looking tired. I actually was able to leave a replacement. He muttered, I'm so happy. Shino smirked at the winner and got up. As Ino was about to announce Naruto's victory, he fell over. Running up to him, she checked his face for any signs of waking up. Shino got up himself and turned round. Take care of him, Ino, I'm off. She simply nodded at him and turned her attention back at Naruto. Baka, both you and Shino wanting to have a spar after training and this late too. Smiling, she placed Naruto on her back. Being the strong person she was, she ran back home. Naruto awoke and turned to his side to face a window. He didn't really recognize the view, but he knew what it was. Looking down, his body was still messy and still in the same clothes for when he faced Shino. Holding his hand close to his heart, he smiled. I finally did it. In his past training days he hadn't been quick enough to do it. But now he successfully did and hopefully will continue to successfully do it into the future. A door opened, and seeing Ino in her PJs did he realize where he was. Ino-chan, he muttered, staring at her glowing face. Her hair was let down and slightly damp. He assumed that she had taken a shower. Naruto-kun, she muttered back with a smile, it's not too late. I'm glad you're awake. I am too, Naruto replied, sighing. I need to do some night practicing then pack up for tomorrow. What, more training? She asked a little concerned. Don't you think you've done enough? Nah, you never know what kind of mission we'll have tomorrow. You can never have too much training. Well, if you insist, was her reply. Watching him get up, she led him to the front door and bid him goodbye. You worried about Naruto-kun? Inoichi asked. Yeah, Dad, when you were just a genin did you work this hard? Nah, I was quite the lazy one. I focused on our own families. Techniques more than actual training. But my sensei and teammates made me train anyways. Smiling at her, she embraced him. Dad, do you think I should work a bit harder? Only if you wish to, INO. Think about your potential and your energy limit. You know Naruto-kun is hardly ever out of energy. That's true, she replied, sighing, smiling at Naruto's charisma. Naruto finished his packing, his eyes slightly tired. Stuffing another shirt into his bag to finish up his packing, he let out a small yawn and turned to his window. Removing his headband, he did a quick stretch before running into the darkness. The streets until he arrived at his training spot. To his surprise, sitting against a tree was Haku, who was staring at the stars in the sky. Smiling slightly, he put his hands behind his head and calmly walked up to Haku. Yo, he greeted as he ducked to dodge about 5 senbon, then fall to the floor and roll over as Haku's feet impacted hard onto the ground. What the? He managed to mutter as he jumped into the tree, dodging some ice needles. Taking out his kunai, he managed to block a couple more senbon, but was caught off guard by Haku's kick to his face. Pretty good, Haku managed to say through pants. Those weights increased, didn't they? Yeah, Naruto began wiping the dirt off his face. Enko-sensei gave it to us, and I haven't gotten used to them completely. Letting out a sly sigh, he turned to Haku, who was smiling at the moment. What the hell? Why are you smiling? You should be worried of my health. You could have killed me. But did I? Haku retorted. And no, I was able to dodge most of it and you ended it with a kick. He let out, almost embarrassed. But still what? Haku began. I trusted that you had the ability to dodge all of those throws, and you should trust that I'm not out to kill you. I ate too much and brought out a kunai. Naruto frowned. That was close though. Pulling out more kunai, he continued. Anyways, we have a mission tomorrow and I want to train. Interesting. Haku replied. I'd like to see you train without the weights. But, Naruto began, I need to get used to these. Oh, that's right, Haku replied, sighing. Well, just for a bit. I'd like to see how fast you are. How about a little race? This got Naruto excited. Smiling widely, he quickly took off his weights and jogged in his spot. Holy crap, my legs feel so light. Haku laughed lightly. Well, of course, you took off the weights. Naruto blushed slightly at this comment but shook it off, telling Haku that they should start. Nodding, they discussed the starting point and the end. Turning to each other, they nodded when the time was to start. As they began to run, Naruto remembered how fast Haku was when they first faced him. He smiled at how close he was to Haku, but he was still winning. He loved the feeling of having no weights on his legs, and the wind blowing through his face. Oh boy, did that feel great as well. As they approached the finish line, Naruto tried hard to inch a bit further and added some more sprint. But unfortunately it ended in a tie. Man, I wanted to win that race. Naruto exclaimed through breaths. You're fast, Haku. Thanks. Haku replied, panting slightly as well. Now put back on your weights and take an additional 10 pounds. I want you to be prepared for that mission. You don't want to be a burden, correct? Of course, Naruto agreed, nodding as well. To protect my precious people. To protect your precious people, Haku repeated with a smile. Slightly tired from staying up late training, he met up with his teammates at the gate. Yawning, he shook his head and took each hand to slap his cheeks. I'm all perked up and ready to go, Enko-sensei. He claimed as Ino and Shino walked towards them. It's good to see that you're excited, Naru-chan. Enko began with a new nickname. Save that energy, okay? She continued, putting a kunai to his neck. Or you'll be sorry when we get ambushed. This looks like a nice team. A girl with a tiny voice spoke. Enko released her genin student and turned to their client for that mission. Oh, nice to meet you, Shihiro-san, Enko greeted. The girl was as tall as Naruto, most likely younger. She had a cute smile and her red hair reached her elbows. Thank you for accepting my mission, She muttered, "It's always nice to have protection and company from those rogue ninjas out there." She continued to speak as the group headed out. "You've walked to Suna on your own?" INO asked. Chihiro nodded, her cute face turning serious. "I trust that your group knows what's out there." She continued seriously, turning to Anko. "If I die out there, if any of us die out there, that would be horrible." "Of course," Anko replied bluntly. Her eyebrow rose as the next hour of the trip grew silent. Naruto let out a yawn as he walked next to INO and Shino. He was annoyed that there were no mad creatures, or even bandits out to fight him. It's sad though, because no one should ever wish that. "Shino, INO, Naru-chan," Anko muttered, Naruto nearly falling over as she used that name again. "I sense something." Naruto's nose twitched along with his ears. He smirked. "It smells pretty bad. Probably some sort of bandit." He was right. At that moment normal throwing knives almost hit them and shouts of men came from the bushes. Anko told Chihiro to stay back and she smiled, nodding. She always wanted to see ninjas in action. But there wasn't too much action as she felt herself sink into the ground. Naruto, Shino, INO and Anko's taijutsu were easily holding back the bandits. But she struggled. She even called out to them but they couldn't hear her. She was annoyed. She hired them to bring her to Suna, to help her little problem even, but she never expected this unless it was. No, it couldn't possibly be. But her head was sinking in, she couldn't help it. Frowning, she decided to show herself, her true self. Taking out her katana, she sliced through the ground and managed to come back up. This time her figure was more womanly, her eyes more dazzling and green as before. She was now as tall as Anko, but 2 times more beautiful than any average woman. Team 6 finished off the bandits and turned to Chihiro. "That was quick and easy," Naruto declared, smiling and giving a thumbs up to her, but froze as Chihiro. She frowned. She had been forced out of her seat. Antaine stayed and stared at them with a frown. Anko laughed surprisingly to Chihiro. INO gazed in wonder at her beauty and Shino stood there quietly. Anko-sensei's prediction was right. "All right, now this'll be a real dangerous mission, right?" "Right," he claimed excitedly, jumping up and down. Naruto continued to stare in amazement. "Amazing," he muttered under his breath, remembering the previous event. They continued to walk as a group, Chihiro cloaked head to toe, preventing her to be seen by anyone that was after her. As he felt the wind blow through his hair, he smiled. The excitement was building up in him, he thought. Since she was such an important person, they might end up being attacked by an incredibly skilled enemy, thus leading to a fantastic experience. In INO's mind was something a little different. She moved her arms a bit, preventing it from being stiff. Looking into the sky, then glancing over to the priestess Mizuo-sama. She was quite skilled indeed, and beautiful to boot. But to need help from simple genin. There must be something wrong with their village to not be able to afford better protection. And to have to disguise herself and still be caught. I'd have quite the powerful enemy in their hands. Letting out a sigh, she hoped for the best. No matter how much she knew Naruto was hoping for a good mission, she doesn't want to have to be placed in a situation where she could die. Looking at her sensei, she remembered their mission before she even became genin. Anko was powerful indeed, and she felt herself to be rather useless. But after the amount of training she got in between, in a way she wanted to prove herself. Shino was slightly bothered by this. Having to be so paranoid. He had sent out several of his insects to scout the area as they walked. He heard of this priestess Mizuo from somewhere. She ran a secret clan and visited Suna for healings and storytelling. But a rumor had started recently that there were people after her. Shino didn't want to die so young. So he hoped his training had been good enough so far and that he would be able to properly protect his teammates. Anko's eyebrow had been twitching for a while. Her cute teammates have been quite serious for a while. Well, except little Naru-chan, whose face has been exploding with excitement. She kept a kunai clutched in her hand. She turned her glance to Chihiro, who simply looked ahead and walked. Her katana fixed on her side. Anko knew of her own abilities, and the ones Chihiro had been rumored to have. Add that to the ability of her students and the possible abilities of the enemies. Yeah, she's worried. But before her thought could continue, there was a stir in the bushes. Shino quickly threw a kunai at it, causing it to freeze for a moment. They all turned their heads as 2 humans emerged from the bushes, revealing themselves. Mizuo Haim. The two cried out in unison. They were both in a typical black ninja outfit, one wielding dual katanas and the other a large sword. From their face masks, green hair emitted from the one who wore the dual katanas and blue emitted from the other. Yumi, Ichi, Chihiro addressed, her face showing as the hood from her cloak fell. It was night time and the group had set up a camp. INO and Naruto were cooking while Shino was out getting firewood. Anko sat next to Chihiro, who was at the time getting information from Yumi and Ichi. Anko rose her eyebrow, knowing nothing that they were speaking about. Letting out a loud and fake sigh, she grabbed their attention and pierced them with her eyes. Okay, now someone is going to telephones going on. Or we're leaving because this is obviously not a D-ranked mission. She smirked as she noticed the two men trembling and Chihiro let out a sigh. I simply hoped that in that form, and being guarded by simple low-ranked Konoha ninjas, that I wouldn't be attacked. She averted her eyes to the side with a slight pout and continued, I'm sure you've heard of me. Mizuo-sama, priestess, well known within the fire country. Anko started. Shino placed some more wood into the fire and continued, her village is unknown, but she is for sure a kunoichi with superb ability. Shino-kun, Anko muttered, turning to him, but as Chihiro began again she turned her attention back to her. HMPH, Chihiro began, the situation is, we've been robbed countless times by a certain organization. I traveled to Konoha to sell some things that were worth so much more there than at our village. Then I hired you four to bring me back peacefully, and maybe just fight off some bandits. But those bandits we fought were so easy. Naruto exclaimed, overhearing this. INO stirred the mountain stew that she and Naruto were working on and turned to Naruto with a concerned look. His face turned excited after its seriousness, which made an sweat drop appear over her head. Tilting her head, she let out a sigh. Yes, I know, Chihiro began, I didn't even feel their presence. I did, Anko started, getting up. I felt another's presence but I ignored it since they didn't attack. Is that why? INO began, turning to her sensei. Yes, that's why I told you to be more careful. Anko continued, turning from INO to Chihiro again. As you sliced through the floor the presence disappeared, so I thought you go rid of them. Amazing, the green-haired one muttered, not even Mizuo-sama didn't sense them. Are you one of Konoha's praised special Junin? He exclaimed, his eyes filled with excitement. How old is this kid? Anko asked, pointing to the one with the dual katanas. Yumi-san is 15-year-old and I am 13, Ichi, the blue-haired one answered, we are one of the top 5 ninja squads in our village. How big is this village? Shino asked. Chihiro closed her eyes and lowered her head. Obviously tired. Well, our village is hidden to many eyes, among a lush forest south to Suna. Only their cage know where we are located exactly. In our village consist 150 people, 100 of them ninjas. From the lowest rank, a trainee to me, the leader. Trainees are of the youngest age, being 8. Anko's and INO's eyes widened. You mean like how our village put them into school around that age, right? INO asked. Chihiro shook her head, then her nose pointed towards the stars in the sky. They do learn the basics in our village's own techniques, but they actually start fighting at that age. The thing is, they learn the basics at about the age of 5. That's absurd, Anko muttered, that's way too young. Are you saying that your trainees are at the same level as us? Genin, Shino asked, tossing another stick into the fire. INO stirred the pot and added some more ingredients. Naruto frowned. Yes, they deserve a childhood. Naruto yelled, they dare. They to continue living under the care of their parents without a care in the world. 5 is too early. Anko turned to her cute Naru-chan with her eyes softening. Naruto-kun, INO muttered, turning her eyes to meet his face. It can't be helped. Yumi retorted back, I didn't have much of a childhood. My father told me that I must assist in protecting our village since it was so small. Then why don't you all move to Suna? Shino asked calmly. Chihiro turned to face him. If it was that easy we would have done that. The cage, he doesn't really like us. For what reason? Asked Anko. Only the previous leader knew. And he's dead, Ichi responded, and ever since that group attacked us, they lowered the learning age to 4. Naruto's eyes widened. What? We need to get rid of those bandits, damn it. Chihiro yelled, passion within her words. Anko, right. She began, turning to Anko, will you and our team help us? I don't know. turning to her genin students whose eyes were amongst confused. Sad and calm, she wondered how to respond. Sensei, I demand that you allow us to help them. Children don't need to be learning the ways of being a ninja. Naruto exclaimed, receiving a look of shock from his comrades. You're a kid too, Ichi stated. I know, but I'm 14. Those kids are like what? 10 and they're already kicking ass. That's just messed up. Naruto continued yelling. Ichi darted his eyes away and Yumi sighed. I know this is none of your business. None of our business. We used to be kids too. I had a not so great childhood of trying to avoid getting hit verbally and physically, and you got kids younger than us throwing shuriken not at practice targets but real bandits. Naruto continued to rant on, and Naru-chan, Anko yelled, Shihiro-san, we'll do it. But only if you raise the age from 4 to at least 8. Shihiro was about to object, but a small smile crept onto her features. Thank you. And you 4 can simply call me Mizuo. The rest of the night was silent. Naruto had been thinking about the state of that village in his head, Shino and Ino doing the same. Ichi and Yumi were munching down on the stew and Anko and Mizuo were having a private conversation. Your students seem pretty dedicated to me, Anko. Mizuo began finishing off her stew. I thank you. Anko gulped down the rest of the contents of her bowl. They aren't exactly dedicated to you. They're simply worried about your village's situation. She placed her bowl on the side and watched as her genin students were lying to rest. Mizuo watched as her own students were getting rest. True. I know it's unbelievable, but everything I said was true. When we get there, you can see for yourself how amazing skilled the children are. Anko let out her ponytail and placed the tie on her wrist. Didn't the children object to this training? Mizuo looked up at the sky for a moment, then turned back to Anko. They did at first, but they learned not to object. Sometimes, when I was in my own training, my father, the previous leader, forced situations that made you train. Anko's eyes widened for a split second, then returned to its natural state. You actually point the life of your village's people in danger when they were simply children. We had no choice, Mizuo responded with a sad face. That organization never left us alone. Snoring was heard coming from Yumi, Ichi and Naruto. The 2 women turned and laughed lightly at the noise. Ino was sleeping peacefully near Naruto and Shino was sleeping against a tree. Who leads this organization? Anko asked, turning from her teammates to Mizuo. Is he a skilled ninja, or a coward? I've never seen him, Mizuo replied, so I'm guessing he's a coward. But you never know, he could be extremely powerful, and simply hiding for a while. Anko nodded, tossing some sticks into the fire. I guess we should be prepared for anything. Yes, Mizuo responded, then getting up. Now, I'll be on guard first. You should get some rest, Anko. Anko nodded at her and she sat against a tree close to the fire, closing her eyes, preparing for sleep. Mizuo stared intensely at the fire, waiting as the night began to pass her by. Naruto, Ino and Shino were aligned next to Anko in that exact order. In front of them were a bickering Ichi and Yumi, and in front of them was Mizuo, who was using her katana, cutting down whatever branches that were in the way. This is one huge forest, Naruto commented out of boredom, kicking the dirt while he walked. Walking for such a long period of time makes my legs hurt. Anko smirked and looked at her genin student. Oh, Naru-chan, think of this as training. How? He asked, looking at her with his fox-like face. Your legs will get used to the weights, Shino responded simply. Not even looking at Naruto. Ino placed her hands on her hips. Haven't you at least thought of that, Naruto-kun? She asked. Naruto retorted, turning away, closing his forward, and forward, that was, until he crashed into Ichi. Hey, he yelled, growling at Naruto. That hurt. He does have a hard head, Ino joked, Naruto getting up with a slightly embarrassed look. He looked ahead, and his jaw nearly dropped in awe. As a massive gate, made from a variety of items from the forest, opened up, he couldn't help but admire the natural beauty of the village. Surely it was small, but the houses were all up in huge trees, and the scenery was brilliant. Children were running around in squads, obviously training, and Naruto stopped his gazing as 2 men, about the size of Anko wearing masks, stood before Mizuo. Leader, they exclaimed, both bowing at the same time. Nothing new has happened since you have left. I see, she responds with a professional tone, return to your training. Yes, said one, then disappearing in a puff of smoke. The other looked at Team 6 and the two other ninjas. He kept his gaze of Ichi. Has my brother been of use? The man asked. Yakedo ni sama, Ichi exclaimed, saluting his older brother. I did my best on this mission. Mizuo smiled at the younger boy, then turned to his brother. Ichi hasn't been a bother at all. Yumi and Ichi were as useful as always. I understand, leader, Yakedo responded, bowing once more. Turning to his brother, he gave him a smile through his mask. Keep up the good work, I'll see you later. Of course, Yakedo ni sama, Ichi responded, bowing. His older brother bowed once more before disappearing with a puff of smoke. Those two are pretty good, although they're still in the village, right? Anko asked, looking around. Correct, Mizuo responded, the group moving again, they're training. Those two are our top two ninja beneath me. Yakedo being the top, the other one is Koyuki. Our village adopted the both of them. Yakedo's jutsu's mostly fire, and Koyuki's water. They're both 18, only 2 years younger than I am. We grew up together. The three genin nodded and Anko smirked. Ah, so you're only 20 Got yourself a male leader, she said with a laugh afterwards. Actually yes, Yumi responded. Yakedo-san is going to marry Mizuo-sama next week. Mizuo let out a faint blush, but Ino caught it. How cute. Childhood friends, growing up together, protecting the village together, then marrying. Ino squealed, are you excited? Mizuo nodded. SLW Oli, of C course. I'm a little nervous, but of course I am. Aside from the happiness that is flowing through all of us because of this news, can I watch the children train and train with them? Shino asked with sarcasm in his voice for the first part. With his tone, it was slightly hard to detect. Of course, Mizuo responded. Ichi, show Shino-san where the children are training. Hi, Ichi responded full-heartedly. Come with me, Shino-san. Shino is fine, he responded as the two walked towards an official training area. Naruto turned to Yumi, who was polishing his katanas on the spot. You, he said, let's fight. Naruto began to stretch 5 minutes after gawking at the beautiful yet mysterious training ground. He spent a lot of time taking in his surrounding, but he was still concerned about how things would go. His opponent gladly accepted his challenge, but warned him about his abilities. If anyone knew Naruto, that kind of talk just excited him more. Shino leaned against a tree quietly as he watched the children train. Puches, kicks, jutsus, they were all done in unison. He was amazed by the determination and sweat the children put into their training. Ah, a kid screamed, falling over. Shino watched. He had lost his balance. Every other student kept on going while the teacher of the group walked towards the child. As the teacher spoke to the child, Shino got a better look. It was a girl about their age. Taking another glance, she looked slightly older. She looked like she treated the child tenderly as he eventually stood up and followed along with his fellow classmates. The sensei glanced over to Shino and gave him a warm smile. Ah, so you're Shino-san. Hello sensei. Shino responded with a slight bow. I am here to study the training of the children and train with them. She looked at him with her prize. But it quickly faded into another smile. Okay Shino-san. My name is Yukino-chi. All you need to do is follow their rhythm for about 30 more minutes. We'll start something else afterwards. Shino nodded in understanding and started doing the exercise. After watching them for so long, he picked up exactly what to do. Impressive, she said with a smile. You can take off your coat, you know. It's a little hot. I'm fine, Shino said in between. Thank you for your concern. She simply smiled at him before returning to watch everyone else. Ino wandered around the village. It was pretty awesome taking in all of the greenery. Letting out a sigh, she glanced up to read. Kuki, she smiled. It sounded like a relaxing place. Since she had a little bit of free time, she wandered in. Her eyes widened as she saw people cutting through rocks and wood samples. It wasn't exactly the kind of place she expected. Hello, greeted an old man. He stood about 1 inch taller than her. His eyes filled with kindness. She stared back at him, ready to fire her own greeting. What kind of place is this? She asked after greeting him. He turned to face those who were combating inanimate objects. Kuki, a place where you focus your chakra and have the ability to cut through the toughest of objects and smash those same objects. So, wind jutsu? She asked, studying the others before facing the old man once again. He shook his head and gave her a smile. Ah, my lovely child, this is different. You don't control wind or form it using your chakra, this Abby. Liddy takes speed and proper control of your chakra. She stared at him. He clearly saw the confusion that was in her eyes. Let me demonstrate, he then said. The two walked over to a section where no one was training. She sat herself on a stump and watched. He took in a deep breath and pulled out a fan from his pocket, Fusajin. He yelled, forming a strng gust of wind slicing the block of wood before him into two. That was wind jutsu, right? INO asked. The old man nodded at her. Now, the style of Kuki. He took in another deep breath and took a stance. Legs spread shoulder width apart, both arms behind his back. Ha! He shouted. He didn't use any jutsu names as he punched. With delicate speed at the remaining piece of wood. INO stared amazed by the grace that was put into it. She hot about it while he continued to demonstrate its power with various other blocks of wood and even large rocks. She decided that she could become more useful if she learned it. Oji-sama, sensei, please. Teach me the way of Kuki. She asked, bowing her head. The old man began to laugh. Just call me Takashi-sensei, young one. Yumi swung his katanas around him before placing it back in their sheaths. Naruto admired his skill with the sword. Right now, he was determined to prove his strength. You ready, Naru-chan? Yumi asked with a serious tone. Naruto frowned. Hey, only Anko-sensei can call me that. He yelled, waving his arms around like a maniac. From you it's a little creepy. Oh okay, sorry, may I call you Naruto-kun then? He asked. Naruto shrugged. Anything but Naru-chan. It's already bad enough having to hear it from her. I see, he responded. Well, shall we begin? Of course, Naruto exclaimed, pumping his fists. Anytime. Okay then, Yumi muttered, let's begin. His face formed a smirk as Naruto's eyes widened. He gasped as he disappeared and jumped up as high as he could and took out a kunai, blocking one of Yumi's katanas, only to get hit by the reverse end of the other one. He was shocked by the amount of power pressing against him. He must have added some of his own chakra to the force. Being pushed backwards, he slammed against the floor with a grunt. He wiped the blood that poured from his mouth. You're good. He managed to block the next two attacks and punched Yumi square in the stomach. Smithful attack. He felt slight pressure on his back. With this he realized that he was to be attacked. Attempting to let his reflexes help him dodge, he felt the weight of his weights and took the hit. Ah, the whole weight training thing Yumi muttered, placing his katanas back into their sheaths. I finished those 2 years ago. Naruto grunted while attempting to get up. See, that's the advantage. I may have lost my childhood, but I became an amazing ninja, correct? Then why do you need our help so badly? Naruto muttered, still trying to find the strength to get up. You should be able to get rid of them yourself. That's wrong, Yumi responded. These guys, there are a lot of them, about half of them being about as powerful as us, some stronger, the rest useless. He crouched down to face Naruto, so I guess you're useless for this, kid. Naruto growled. He needed to get up. He wasn't weak. He told himself that he wasn't weak. He'll help Trhe village and prove himself. Finally, with a push he got up. I'm not done yet. Yumi frowned. If I'm not careful, I could kill you, Naruto-kun. I haven't perfected the reverse blade technique. I don't care. Naruto yelled. Hear this, and remember it well. I will not die until I become Hokage. Hokage. Yumi wondered, tilting his head. Is that the name of your leader? Yes. To become Hokage is my dream. I will not be defeated here. Naruto yelled, wiping more blood from his mouth. Removing his weights he stretched slightly. I'm not done yet, Yumi. Then bring it on, Yumi muttered with a smirk. Pulling out his katanas he swung it at Naruto. Bring in. His arms back up in time. Naruto blocked the sword and managed to knock Yumi back. Taking this opportunity, he quickly faced Yumi's back and punched him with all his might. Yumi grunted while being propelled forward. Flipping before landing, He thrusted the katanas into the ground, saving himself. He grunted again, feeling the aftershock. Blood trickled down his mouth as he turned to see Naruto smiling. You think this is over? You think because you got a shot on me you win? Think again, Naruto-kun, he yelled in a rage. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the sharper end of the sword swing towards him, backing away enough. He only developed a cut right underneath his right eye. Damn, he muttered before kicking Yumi's legs. As he was thrown off balance, Naruto laid another punch on him. This time, he got him square in the jaw. INO was meditating. It was one of her training methods. Takashi Sensei had told her that she needed to feel the air in order to do this. She was thinking that after she mastered this, she could learn some wind techniques. She knew she had to learn quickly because Kami only knows how long they were going to stay there. INO-chan, old man Takashi muttered, interrupting her meditating, it's lunch 12:30. You said you had business. And that I'm returning at 2. INO finished his sentence, placing her shoes back on. Thank you so much for taking me in. No thank you, Takashi said as she bowed. It's always a pleasure taking in a new student. And you, my dear, have talent. Thank you, sensei. Shino was speaking with the children since the training was done. They were intrigued by the history of another village. And strangely enough, they weren't creeped out by the insects living on his body. She had gone to report to Mizuo about that day's progression. What's his name? One child asked, pointing to the beetle that rested on Shino's nose. Shino never played with children before. He was a little nervous at first, but it was kind of nice. It was like when he spent time training his bugs. I haven't named him yet, Yuko, Shino responded. He still hasn't been able to produce a smile, but it was coming. Can you name him after me then? Yuko asked with excitement. Shino smiled on the inside. Even though they were deprived of a childhood, they were still kids. Of course, Shino responded. Yuko gave him a hug afterwards. Shino didn't blush since he wasn't used to such a feeling. But he felt slightly tingly. Ah, natural with the kids, she said from behind Shino. He twitched and turned to her. They seem to like you. Shino ni-san is awesome, Chi-sensei. The children chimed at once. He is so cool. The boys exclaimed. He is so mysterious. The girls exclaimed. Shino scratched the back of his head in response. I'm a simple genin s. Striving to become a great ninja that my clan can be proud of, he responded coolly. Of course, she replied, sticking her tongue out afterwards. Chi-senpai. Shino-san. Ichi yelled from the side, it's lunch time. Coming. Shino muttered. See you later, Chi. Shino continued. Oh, you're not getting away from me, Shino-kun, she said in a cheerful tone. In this village, we all eat together? INO asked. Anko nodded. Yeah, I was shocked at first, but hey, it's a small village. This might be interesting. I see. INO responded with a nod. That means that you want me to find Naruto and Yumi, right? You're a smart girl, INO, Anko said with a smirk. In a blink of an eye she vanished. Wait, where are they? INO exclaimed into nothingness. Muttering curses to herself, she looked around the village looking for training areas. Hearing a familiar voice, she ran up to training area 78 feet. Naruto-kun, she yelled. Frowning, she found both Yumi and Naruto beat up. Hey INO-chan. Baka. There was plenty of food along the long table that filled the hallway. It was an extremely long and wide hallway. And it was filled with noise. But anyone could tell that everyone was having fun. Naruto healed faster than Yunmi, who was eating with Ichi. Naruto was filled with energy after eating and played around with the children. Shino was talking with Chi about the history of her village. And INO was getting to know all 10 of Takashi's sons and daughters. Woo-hoo, Naruto yelled, Anko soon joining him. Mizuo giggled in her spot. The two were quite dynamic and filled with energy. Bam! The villagers began to scream as many strange men entered the room. Mizuo told them to evacuate to the safety houses, and the men didn't bother stopping them. Oh, Mizuo-chan, a quite feminine voice called out, we're back. As a puff of smoke settled down, a woman, slender and fit, stood in a red and black outfit. All of these invaders had similar shades and the same crest of a full moon on their back. The woman's outfit fit perfectly to every curve on her body, and a hood was fashioned on her head. It's been a while, hasn't it? She said in an almost purring tone. She let down. Her hood to reveal raven hair shoulder length, her bangs covering her left eye, a scar going across her right eye. All of the masked men surrounded the room as the villagers escaped to their safety. Yusa's accompanied with Takashi and his trained 10 children. Naruto stared at the woman with a glare. She was walking towards Mizuho with a smirk on her face and a kunai in hand. The big guy wanted us to check up on you guys, she stated, parting Mizuho's hair behind her ear. Don't touch her, Yakedo yelled, rushing to her side, pushing back the hand of the mysterious woman. She shook her head as she backed away from the couple. Oh Yakedo, you know this woman doesn't mind my touch. I bet you she misses it. Don't you, Egan? Team 6 gasped at the term. The word had meant lover. Ino was taken aback, Anko rose her eyebrow. Shino kept his normal face, and Naruto's confusion was still unbeatable. Not anymore, Mizuho said through a blush. She fidgeted with her fingers, bit her lip and averted her eyes. Yakedo saw this and held Mizuho in his arms. That's why you haven't been able to kill me yet, she cooed, delicately tracing her fingers over Mizuho's brow. I said, don't touch her, Yakedo yelled, a flame emitting from his palm as he brought Mizuho closer to himself. Touchy, the woman said, rolling her crimson eyes. I don't love you anymore, Hina, Ikoka. Don't use hat term with me if what you say is true, Hina replied in a harsh tone. Anyways, the big guy has plans, he's going to attack your ville. Why are you telling us this? Koyuki yelled, a blue cloud forming around his right arm. Whoa Yuki-kun, settle down. I just wanted to warn you guys. She gave a salute to Mizuho before her men all disappeared in a smoke. Farewell. Egan. As things settle, down and the village continued their lunch, Anko sat next to Mizuho with a questioning look in her eyes. The leader was munching on some bread, her eyes staring at her food. Before Anko had the chance to say anything, Naruto took Mizuho's attention. Now, I don't know anything about what happened between you and that Hina lady, but now's not the time to be moping. Your village is enjoying a lunch, and you should too. You can't show such a face to your villagers, he said, his eyes sincere with concern. Thanks Naruto-kun, Mizuho responded, a smile on her face. It was a little shaky, It took a firm place as Yakedo put his arm around her waist. As Naruto rubbed his nose in embarrassment, he turned to see Anko with a smirk on her face. His eyes widened in slight fear, and within an instant he was under her arm. Oh my Naru-chan, such brilliance, such charm, she says, his head very close between her chest and her neck. Can't breathe, Anko-sensei, he yelled, struggling through her tight grip. Those two are getting closer, aren't they, Ino? Shino mutters after swallowing the rest of his meal. Turning to her from the lack of response, he notices the confusion in her eyes. Two girls together, she mutters. How Shino? How not? Ino, we're young, so you never know. People fall in love, have crushes on people, and it's not all on purpose. You don't choose who you like, who you fall in love with. That's how we come with same-sex relationships. You and I are the same age, Shino. How would you know? She asked, her eyes piercing his. Isn't same-sex relationships just wrong? You don't know me that well, Ino. I'm just saying, open your mind. You can't choose who you like. Feelings like that just happen. I guess. Ino-chan, cooed Naruto before hugging the girl from behind. And Naruto-kun, she yelled in surprise, letting the boy sink into the hug. You surprised me. That was the point, Ino-chan, he said with his foxy smile shining towards her. If you excuse me, you too. I have someone I want to talk to, Shino mutters, waving a simple goodbye. Hoi, that Chi girl is really pretty, Shino, but isn't she older than you? Ino teased with a smirk. The bug boy simply ignored her, his face showing no signs of blushing. As the lunch progressed, someone had given Naruto some sort of alcohol, and so he's playing with the kids extremely loudly. Your student Naruto, he's a very lively boy, Mizuho says, taking a sip of her water. Anko let out a hearty laugh, watching as the boy danced around with the children. Yeah, it's a good thing, with the sort of childhood he had. She answered, the smile on her face simple. Mizuho tilted her head in curiosity. What kind of childhood did he have? One he didn't deserve, Anko replied simply, turning to Mizuho with a frustrated look. An outcast, for the demon that he keeps inside of him. Outcast? She asks, understanding the demon's situation. He's the Nine-Tails boy, I assume. Yes, that's why he was so touchy about the whole childhood thing earlier. A silence presented itself between the two. All that was heard was the children's laughter. As Anko turned to face the leader, she had stood up on the table. My people, tonight we feast. All the villagers stared at her in understanding. Everyone, start preparations at 5. Yelled Yakedo, nodding towards his future bride. Laying against a tree, Naruto watched as the villagers busied themselves with preparations. His face was filled with agitation. None of them let him help. INO had gone to train at some place and she wouldn't tell Naruto any details. He decided not to attack her with questions, even though it was exactly what he wanted. After the rejection from her, he looked for Shino. He was at your typical waterfall meditating. That's when he turned to the villagers for something to do. I'm so bored, he yelled, rubbing his back against the bark of the tray. He had been rejected by everyone. Hoi, called out a dangerous voice. Naruto felt himself shiver. The voice was oh too familiar. Sensei, he mumbled, his agitation still evident after the shiver. She gave him one of her wide smiles. She put a kunai to his neck. He had this routine done on him too many times. He wasn't scared at all. Training, he then said with a bored tone. But within a second, his eyes widened. Oh yes. Training. His boredom was cured. Strange how he didn't think of training before. I wonder how much stronger you've gotten, Naru-chan, she said in a most affectionate tone. The blade of her kunai traced a heart on his cheek. The blade was dull and didn't make a mark in his skin. Oh, you'll see, he exclaimed with much confidence, using his hand to push away the kunai. Standing about 10 meters away from each other, the two from Konoha stared each other down. On Anko's face was her dangerous smirk, on Naruto's was his excited smile. Naruto's fist clenched and loosened over and over again with excitement. He hadn't fought with Anko in ages. And his boredom itched up an extra excitement for a fight. The WND was fair as it blew back his golden blonde hair, his hitai shimmering in the sun. His hands were now firm on his hips as he continued to stare down his teacher. Anko was now twirling a kunai on her finger. The sharpness of her blade was evident in the sunlight, reacting to the shimmer off of Naruto. Well, Naruto calls out impatient. His fingers were now fidgeting near his kunai pouch, the sparkle in his eyes brightening as he watched her twirl the kunai. You start us off, she taunts, taking out 2 more kunai. Don't worry about accidentally killing me. He smirked. That may be the death of you one day, he responds, pulling out his own kunai. Don't be so confident, she continues, holding all 3 kunai carefully in her hand. Within a matter of seconds, Naruto had appeared behind Anko and tried to connect a punch to her head. With a giggle, the snake tamer blocked his attack and grabbed his arm. In a poof he disappeared. You sure are fond of that cage bunchin', aren't you? Yells into the thin air. Yup, he responds. Anko looked up at a smiling Naruto, throwing down his kunai. Her face didn't panic as she caught the flying kunai and flung it right back at him. His face grew worried as he dodged the returning weaponry, but only to get a kick in the stomach. Shit, he mutters as his back connected with a tree. Staring ahead of him at Anko, he growled. Wanting to finally get a good hit on her, he removed his weights. A little early that, don't you think? She said in a mocking tone. He had vanished again and she shook her head. Feeling the air of a missed punch, she continues to dodge a flurry of kicks and punches. Ag, he yells in aggravation, trying to get one of his attacks to connect. I'm impressed, she says, continuing to block his attacks. You got faster, and I can actually kind of feel those attacks. She laughed afterwards, only making him angrier. Damn it, he yells after she finally finished toying with him and punching him backwards. Once again he hit the tree, the leaves falling onto his body. Before he could stand up, she pinned him to the ground with a kunai and held another to his neck. I win, she claims, a wide grin gracing her features. He turned away from her with a pout. I'll win. One day, he mutters, averting his eyes back to hers. She let out a laugh, helping the fox boy stand up. Don't worry, kid, I'm a lot of levels ahead of you, you're pretty god for a genin. But don't let that go to your head. Don't want you dying too early. He growled at her, shut up. I'm not gonna die. Not before I become Hokage. His head was between her chest and neck, his air fading from existence. Oh, you. Keep on thinking that. Keep at it. His pleas for release were ignored and all was heard were her laughs. Ah, INO scree water. She had been practicing her balance, which she thought was pretty good since she was a ninja. Try again, Takashi says from the highest pole. She spit the water out of her mouth, it had a salty taste. This is the what, 15th time. She yelled in aggravation. She swam over to the shore, and prepared to try again. Patience is a virtue, child, the old man said in response to her annoyance. She sighed and started the task from the beginning, just get to the end. Focus, and be gentle with your body and steps. She nodded at her new teacher and tried the exercise once again. While she commenced the operation, Mia, Takashi's daughter, came to sit on the second highest pole next to him. Who's this blonde? She asked, staring as INO focused on her task. She's pretty. She sure is, Takashi replied. Now what brings you here, miss? Mia was 15 years old with crimson red hair going slightly past her shoulders. Her skin was a pale color, with her eyes green. She continued to stare, twitching after Takashi's question. Oh, I was finished with my task and just came to see what's up. Takashi's eyebrow rose as her eyes didn't dare to peel away from INO's prancing figure. Oh, don't tell me. She turned to her father with a bright pink face. Ahwa. She Turnadawa. Why, and jumped back to where she came from. Takashi let out a hearty laugh before turning back to INO. She was almost done, and he was impressed by how smooth her movement was. He descended onto the water, using the chakra control to walk upon it. He approached her as she finished her task, her face lighting up with excitement. She let out a loud cheer, but in the process lost her balance and fell into the salty water. Takashi stood there and broke into laughter once more. Congratulations, he yells in a proud tone. He offers her a hand as she stands upon the water as well. Did I do it well? She asks, squeezing the water from her hair. You did fantastic, came a third voice. It was a boy who looked about her age. His eyes were brown and his eyes were the same shade of red as Mia. INO recognized him from lunch, and he gave her a stunning smile. Max, Takashi said with a sigh. I'll be glad to help her in this part of the training, father. Max claimed, his smile widening. What is the next part? INO asked, not seeing the attention she was getting from Max's eyes. Hand-to-hand combat / dancing, Mia says, entering the room once more. You want to help too, don't you? Takashi asks. INO giggles in excitement. How nice of you too, she said after her giggling fit. She didn't notice the glares between the two. Takashi let out another sigh, leading all three to another room. After finishing her own duties, Mizuho requests a 15-minute break. Of course, replied Yakedo with a smile, just come back when you're ready. Mizuho gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before retreating to the main park of the village, where the waterfall ran. Gliding her feet across the luscious grass of the park, Mizuho enjoyed the air and the scent of nature. Hearing the rushing water of the waterfall, she turns to it to find a boy meditating under it. Shino sat with a blindfold and only his pants underneath the waterfall. He was in a meditated position, so Mizuho decided not to call out to him. Mizuho-san, he then called out, the rushing water making him almost inaudible. Mizuho had caught him anyways and responded, yeah. Are you completely over Hina? The question hit her hard. She didn't affect it all. She knew they were about 14. So she didn't think they'd even bother to get into that kind of thing. She recovered from her state of shock and bit her bottom lip before responding, I'm not sure. She answered honestly. She couldn't lie, not after the rush of emotions that were flooding her at the moment. What happened? He continued, if you don't mind. She shook her head, but remembered that he couldn't see her. I don't mind. It's good to talk about this anyways. Anytime you're ready. Mizuho-chan. Hina called out in an affectionate tone. She tackled me, nuzzling her head into my back. We were both 17, having been together for 2 years. That tickles, I called out between laughs. We just finished a little brawl and were playing around in this very park. After that we decided to stare at the sky, watching as the clouds floated by. 2 years, Hina began, reaching out her hand for mine. I know, I responded, accepting hers. It was like every day, relaxing after our usual training session. Things were going great, and I didn't worry at all about the troubles that attacked our village every once in a while. Mizuo-sama, called the voice of Yakedo. We were only friends at the time. Yeah, your father wants you, he said firmly. I could tell something was wrong, his eyes looked a little worried. Okay, I responded, getting up from my spot. I turned to give Hina a hug before reporting to my father. Now he was a good man, a fantastic ninja, and a responsible leader. I knew my time as leader could start at any moment, with the organization that's after us. Any of us could become goners. At the time I didn't think I'd be leader for another 4 to 5 years. My father was young, only 35 at the time. Greeting father, I said, bowing politely at his presence. Hello Zuho-chan, he greeted. He and mother were the only ones who greeted me with that name. Mother was dead at the time, she had died 3 years before. What is it that you wanted? I asked, getting straight to the point. I was gonna do some group training with Hina, Yakedo and Koyuki afterwards and I was quite excited. Well, knowing this village, I can go out at any time. I nodded, it was completely possible. So he continued, I want you to find yourself a husband. I froze at this. He knows perfectly well of my relationship with Hina, and he had been okay with it. I felt angered and yelled, but father, if anyone, I plan to marry a wife. For my whole life till then, I had only been in love with one person. And that was Hina. I was pretty sure that I was a homosexual. And GTTing a husband seemed impossible. I know you and Hina are close, and have been close. Exactly. But the thing is, you need to have an heir. I understood what he meant. So I calmed down. It needs our blood. It was at that moment that I really hated not having any siblings. But, Hina, I was ready to cry. I'm sorry, but it's for the sake of the clan. From there I ran to my safe place. It was a cliffside on the outskirts of town. The only person who knew of it was Hina, and she found me after 10 minutes. She greeted me with a hug and then a kiss on the cheek. She frowned at my tears. And all I could was feel angry. We have to break up, I brought myself to say. I felt so weak, especially when she took off her usual firm grip. What? It was at that moment a bandit ninja came out from nowhere. It must have been my emotional state that kept me from not moving. He charged at me with a katana, but before contact Hina pushed me aside. His katana forged a scar onto her right eye and from there she unleashed a lightning jutsu from rage that caused his katana to fly off. But in a rage he pushed her off the cliff. I couldn't believe it, a skilled ninja Lee. Her being caught off guard and at the time I thought she was dead. It was all my fault, and I couldn't bear with it. I killed that bandit out of rage and fainted on the spot. Yakedo had found me and brought me home. A year later Yakedo and I got closer. My father chose him to become my husband. 2 weeks after that, our village got attacked. They had a new female member, whose voice was too familiar. She let down her hood and to my surprise it was Hina. Her hair was dyed though, it was blonde before. It was our first encounter after so long. And after seeing the hurt in her eyes as Yakedo held me protectively like she used to. I couldn't take it and ran off. She followed me. Things came to other things, and we ended up fighting. I didn't kill her when I had the chance, but I was knocked out cold. After that whenever we were invaded she always sought after me in argument before we were at each other's necks. I couldn't bring myself to kill her ever. And she never killed me. Shinobi. Why this time was changed and sitting next to her. The sky was getting a little dark, and Naruto came to bring them to the feast. As Naruto told the two about his day, they walked along with him, not saying a word to each other. Tomorrow will be a day in which we will remember. Mizuo started as everyone in the village sat in their appropriate spots. Mizuo used her wind jutsu control to help her voice flow to hose at the very back. Everyone watched her with both Koyuki and Yakedo by her side. Tomorrow we will do our best to defeat those who infiltrate us. Now that we are prepared for their coming. And now that we have more shinobi and even the help of these Konoha ninja. Team 6 sat near the front with both Yumi and Ichi and their family. And I will avenge my father, and kill the one who has killed him. And if things go well, Koyuki and Yakedo will have fought their leader with Mitarashi Anko from Konoha. I trust you all will be safe in our safe houses, and those children who think they are ready enough to fight. Please fight under the guidance of both Shino from Konoha and our very own Chi. Takashi, I trust your students and children will also be prepared to fight. A long row of nods shook furiously as she said all of this. No hint of a scared face amongst the crowd. The villagers sure trust her, Ino muttered. Of course, she is their leader, Naruto responded, looking at her with admiration. He wanted the people of Konoha to one day look at him like that. And so, let us enjoy this feast and party like we've never partied before. With that came a cheer from the villagers. She took her seat at her table and signaled those with musical instruments to start. It was a beautiful sound. A collaboration of steel drums, wooden wind instruments, harps, and acoustic guitars. Team 6 were new to this sound, as music in Konoha was rare. Naruto had a smile on his face of absolute bliss. It's beautiful, Ino cooed, her eyes closed, leaning over her food. Isn't it? Came the voice of Max. Ino opened her eyes at the sound of his voice and immediately blushed. Hey Max, she greeted, her blush soon fading. Naruto's eyebrow rose at this and his eyes scanned Max. He looked like a good guy. Max, Naruto then said, interrupting the boy from speaking further. He's Takashi, my sensei's son Naruto-kun, she responded to his tone of curiosity. Oh really, so what, was he with you earlier? He gave Ino one of his annoyed raised brows. She let out a sigh, neither seeing Max's aggravated face. Yeah, and me too, came another, sticking herself between Naruto and Ino. Mia, Ino yelled in surprise, another blush creeping onto her face. Now Naruto's face became even more twisted. He was extremely confused. Ino, why did your face go so red when both of them came to you? Your face never got so red in front of me. Mia giggled and she grabbed onto Ino's arm. Well, you weren't there when we were training. Max stood over to where Mia was and shoved her off of Ino. It wouldn't have been so embarrassing for her if you weren't there. Naruto watched as the two argued, his face not shaking off its troubled state. Shino finished his meal before being dragged to another area by a little boy who later introduced himself as Kira. Apparently he was Chi's little brother and amongst the children whom he was with earlier. Chi-ne-chan, he called out, finally releasing Shino, I got him. Quote, Shino looked questionably at Chi, she stuck her tongue out at him playfully and he didn't react. She gave him a little pout, cold and emotionless I see. There is no emotion to show besides maybe a bit of curiosity, he responded calmly. She let out a sigh before offering him a seat next to her. You going to continue what you were going to tell me earlier? He asked. He had come to her before to talk, and she claimed that there was something she wanted to tell him. She rested her elbow on the boy's shoulder, leaning her head against her arm. Oh yeah. Before she had the chance to tell him, she was called elsewhere. Go on, Shino insisted. After all, today he's been taking in a lot of information. You know that story of our leader and that traitor Hina? She started, her voice losing its cheery tone. She turned to him as he nodded. Their relationship, I know. Anyways, she continued, gazing straight ahead of them, I'm like that too. Shino turned to her to see her looking directly at him. You're homosexual, he then bluntly said. She nodded with a slight smile. Oh, I see. Her smile widened. Haha cool. You don't mind then? He shook his head. Of course not. An old friend of mine was also gay. She couldn't tell, but his eyes averted to the other side. She removed her elbow and wrapped her arm around his neck. You my friend are one heck of a guy. If I was straight I'd consider you as dating material, she claimed loudly, laughing after at his follow-up blush. You sure you can do it? Asked Anko as for now she was alone with Mizuo. Yakedo had gone to play with his brother, and Koyuki went to play his own harp. Mizuo took a small sip of her tea and faced Anko with an unsure expression. I think I can do it, she responded honestly. Not being able to meet her eyes. With that came an awkward silence. It lasted a whole 2 minutes. You still love her don't you? Came Anko's very late response. Her eyes tried to meet those of Mizuho's. But she didn't allow it. It's a simple question. Anko pushed on, her face lined with agitation and concern. Come on. Yes, she admitted finally. She shoved her head into Anko's shoulder and cried horribly. Anko could feel her shoulders soak up her tears, and all she could do was pat the younger one on her head. You must have decided to do it. She's the one who killed your father, isn't she? Anko asked, holding the girl firmly against her. Yeah, she replied, that one word almost inaudible thanks to her tears. Do you think that killing her is the only way for you to get rid of these bandits? Anko asked. She's the only one that I fight. She knows where I am, and we always do the same things. If I finally kill her, I can help the rest of the village that fighting defeat their leader and the rest. Why did she leave the village anyways? If you two were lovers at a time, that means she lived here. Mizuho hesitated before responding. Removing herself from Anko, she wiped her eye and relaxed into her chair. We thought she was dead, she replied, keeping her gaze at the sky. Why? Anko asked, now intrigued by the story even more. Mizuho glanced at Anko for a second before facing the sky once more. We had a fight and she saved me from a bandit. After she was pushed off the cliff by the bee bandit after being slashed at her right eye. Anko remembered her scar and nodded, insisting that Mizuho continued. After that, we thought she was dead. That was until about a year later when we were attacked. They had a new female member, and it was Hina. A silence formed between the two. All that was heard was the chatter and laughter of the villagers and the instruments. I wish you luck then, Anko finally said, and I hope you find out things before you choose to really kill her. Mizuho watched as the older woman walked away. She bit her bottom lip as another tear rolled down her cheek. Forming a tight fist with her left hand, she slammed it into the table. Within moments she felt arms wrap themselves around her. Yakedo-kun, Mizuho cooed in a most affectionate voice. But after the lack of a response, she realized how much more and gentle the arms that were around her were. Egan, purred Hina, you can't be here. There was no response. I'm right then. I'm just imagining you. She sat relaxed, basking in the warmth of the other's hold. Can I really kill you tomorrow? She then whispered, knowing that there will be no response. You both have a crush on INO-chan. Naruto yelled, nearly falling over. Shush, the two cried out in unison. They both looked backwarding with Anko. But you barely know her. Naruto continued in an attempted whisper. Have you looked at her? The two responded once again in unison. And she's so friendly, and nice. Ha, Naruto replied, laughing while holding his stomach, you two barely know her. She may seem like that at first, but she's bossy, and witty and likes to hit me on the head. Feisty Max analyzed, scratching his chin, I like. Bam, owie, owie owie, Naruto cried out, holding his head, INO-chan. The girl had come over and smacked him over the head. I heard you Naruto, she growled, refusing to use the kun at the moment. INO-chan, he called out as the other two dragged her away, INO-chan. He bowed his head down in defeat as the three were now elsewhere. He started muttering to himself, fine, I don't need them. He turned around to see where Shino was, but was greeted by Ichi. Hey there Naruto-san, he said, a smile on his face. Yo, Naruto greeted, erasing the negative thoughts from his mind. Haven't you ever wondered why we barely refer to Mizuho Hime as a priestess and more as our leader? He asked, taking a seat on the floor next to the boy. She's a priestess, Naruto asked, completely forgetting. Yeah, she knows some techniques priestesses would know. Healing jutsu different from medical ninja, demon binding jutsu, seals, all that kind of stuff. Naruto nodded at Ichi's knowledge of the subject. The boy's blue hair was spiky at the front while the back was held in a small ponytail. Oh cool, Naruto then responded. So why is she barely referred to as a priestess? Because she's pansexual, he then added. Naruto looked at Ichi as if he were crazy. Pansexual, like, she falls in love with pots and pans. His eyes couldn't go any wider at the thought of it. Ichi shook his head. No, it means that she doesn't believe in gender. And to the higher standing priests and priestesses, gender is important. They sort of have a thing against same-sex relationships. Naruto scratched his head in confusion. 1. What is pan supposed to mean? 2. why would they have anything against it? That's just weird. Ichi let out a sigh. I know You'd think that those who teach understanding, caring and love would be more understanding. I guess they think that it's evil or something. Wow, they sure are stupid, Naruto remarked, a frown upon his face, that must bring down some people. Yeah, oh, and by the way, Pan, would mean, all. It had been midnight and the giant bonfire near the musicians was beginning to die out. Many of the families had already moved into their designated safe houses, while Mizuo, Yakedo and Koyuki were keeping an eye out for the bandits with the gate guards. Naruto and Anko had gotten a slip of sake and were dancing around the fire, while Shino slept and Ino trained a bit more with Takashi. Sorry about my kids, Takashi said while blocking some of Ino's wind attacks. Put more speed into it. I can barely feel a breeze. Ino grunted before letting out another punch. It's okay, she then said, letting loose some of her weights. Wow, he muttered with a toothy grin following, that was hard. Quote, hum biddy biddy biddy, hum, biddy biddy doo doo. The two Konoha chanted while dancing around the fire. Late doo 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 dee da da. Boom. Splode. Splode. Both Anko and Naruto were quickly thrown out of their drunken states as Mizuho came running towards them. Everyone. They're here. As expected, Mizuho's eyes searched for only one person throughout the crowd of bandits. As much as she shouldn't, she avoided all other noise, and hunted for the one who had her by a thin string. Naruto was quickly thrown out of his drunken trance. Anko had been clean before him. Having left to speak with Koyuki and Yakedo already, he rubbed his throbbing forehead before being pulled away by Shino's strong grip. Focus Naruto, Shino called out, having come out of his sleep. Both he and Naruto dodged another rain of kunai, hiding behind a close tree. This is the real thing now, right? Naruto claimed calmly, having pulled out a kunai. It's time to prove ourselves. More than that, Shino responded, sending his bugs out to inspect. It's time to prevent all pain from coming to this village. It's time to prevent kids losing their childhood to ninja training. Naruto followed up, his breath intake sharpening. I suggest you remove those weights, Shino commented, wiping his own glasses. Naruto did exactly as he said, feeling very light as the weights were removed. You ready? Of course, Shino responded, part of his smirk showing through his collar. Now I'm off to go meet with Chi. Don't die out there. You should know me better, Naruto responded with a confident smile. Now let's do this, Shino responded with a simple nod as the two separated from each other. The weather seemed to have picked up the uneasy air. The winds became harsher, and those in the safe houses crouched close together. Some of the more experienced ninjas of their town were all guarding the houses in case there were those who managed to get so far. About 100 meters away from those ninja were more, hidden in the trees in case the front lines began to weaken. And at a safe base were those who have trained under Mizuo under the arts of medical jutsu, ready to take in all the wounded. As much as they all trusted their leader, a feeling of uneasiness couldn't help but exist. Naruto had been running through the trees, fighting off those who were assaulting the guards. His eyes were focused, his mouth only opening to yell out a couple of battle cries. He was on his fourth kunai now, as the others had been knocked out of his hands. He began to grow a little tired, but he worked hard to ignore it. Finally, after being knocked into a tree, the blond boy grunted as some blood trickled down his mouth. He glared at the one who did this, only seeing this ninja's head being sliced off by the blades of Yumi. Quickly seeing this event, Naruto stood from his position, wiping the blood from his mouth. Don't be looking down, man, Yumi quickly said before coming to his side. It was one setback, Naruto growled, his pride being hurt by those words. I hope you're right, Yumi replied, his expression still as his body. Shino stared at the 10 children who felt they were ready to battle. He admired their bravery, and was relieved to know that they were all above the ages of 10. He watched as Chi gave them a prep talk, waiting for his own bugs to return from their scouting. The children showed no fear, each equipped with a weapons bag, and some even with a katana. Even Chi's little brother was there. Oni-chan, we will not let you down, Kira claimed, his voice of a more serious tone than what Shino heard the other night. I know you won't, she responded with a half smile. Her right hand rubbed her brother's shoulder in affection. She bit her bottom lip as her eyes watered. If you did, I'll never forgive you. Don't worry, Kira responded, putting one of his hands on his sister's. Both you and Oni-chan are here. All of us know that we're safe in your hands. Quote, it's true, Chi-san, Shino responded. His bugs returned from inspection. These children are skilled, and we're watching them too. Do not worry, or else that will be your downfall. Chi simply nodded, her tears being dried up by the winds. Now what do your bugs tell you? Yakedo took the first hit as a man cloaked in all black came down. Koyuki frowned. At this and immediately flung a kunai at the blindfolded man. Having been assumed to be the leader, Enko also charged at the man as he blocked the incoming kunai. He smirked, only his nose, eyebrows, mouth and jet black hair being exposed. Yakedo spit out some blood. That's got to be the leader, he assumed. I know already, Enko replied, a frown on her face, sort of your typical, mysterious, leader if you ask me. Seeing the disgusted look on the only exposed part of the leader, her frown turned into a smirk. I'm right then, she replied, pulling out two of her specialized, extra-long kunai. She twirled fingers, a playful glint in her eyes. This lack of seriousness, is it good or bad for us? Yakedo asked Koyuki in a short-lived laugh. He took a glance at Koyuki who also turned to him. Why don't you ask her? Koyuki replied, as the said woman started charging towards the mysterious leader. Yakedo shrugged, too late I guess. Miss Mi-hun, came an O2 familiar voice. Mizuho lightly gasped at the voice, before coming to a stop. She bit her bottom lip and tried to grasp as much courage as she could. Taking in a deep breath, she pulled out a kunai. Are we gonna go through this shit again? Hina muttered, her voice having a hint of hurt and a hint of hatred. This pointless battle. I have to, Mizuho responded, still looking for her ex-lover. Hina let out an inaudible sigh. All that was heard was the sound of the wind blowing through the trees. The slents just grew as well as the emotion that brew, and the sickening feeling in the pit of Mizuho's stomach. You know you can't kill me, Hina then said, no in front of Mizuho. She put her hand of her ex-lover's shoulder, you know you still love me. Her eyes widened within seconds as a kunai left a small cut across Hina's cheek. She frowned as she backed away about 3 meters, her hand touching a tree. She wiped the small bit of blood with her index finger. After licking the blood, she eyed her attacker. Her eyes locking with those filled with determination. My story so far, has been filled with so many up and downs. I must have a happy ending. Mizuho yelled in a rage, tears welling up in her eyes. Hina stared with hurt and concern shot clearly in her eyes. Her hand clenched into a tight fist, as she bit her bottom lip. You really do love this village, don't you? Hina finally said, as her emotions collected themselves slowly. Her eyes strayed away to the dirt on the ground. You'd even. It's my duty, Hina responded, I have to. The two finally found each other's eyes again. A strange range of emotions strayed along with the wind. The silence growing once more. What felt like hours, was meant as 2 minutes. Mizuho had disappeared from Hina's sight and a cry filled with anger and hesitation echoed throughout the area. Hina dodged the rain of kunai before glancing at her bleeding hand. She stared at it, watching while the deep red of her blood flow. She was surprised, and didn't know what to do. I'm serious, Hina, Mizuho retorted, her face as serious as she intended to be. She clasped another kunai tightly. I'm dead serious. Hina could see through the mask, and saw the fear clear in her eyes. She just stared as the other's mouth opened once more. I'm going to kill you. Within a flash, Hina dodged another kunai, and carefully blocked a rain of punches. The two had their eyes locked on each other. Hits being received, hits being blocked, hits being given. It wasn't a pretty sight, especially when Mizuho started crying out. This is my story, my damn story, she yelled, connecting a hit across Hina's face. The other one fell back from the contact, licking the coppery taste of her own blood. It's going to end the way I want it, I'm not going to let you get in my way again. Hina finally had enough. She got up quickly and gracefully, clenching her teeth as tears emerged. Mizuho was going to throw another punch when she felt a cold hand slap her cheek. Her eyes widened, as a hand automatically rose to meet the throbbing skin. Am I really in your way? Hina yelled, to a degree that Mizuho winced, as this damned village. So important that you'd end your damn story just to save it. Am I not in your story anymore? She approached Mizuho with every word that came out of her mouth. She fought back her tears with annoyance. You know me enough to know how much I love this village. My village is important to me, our village is where we grew up. Mizuho yelled, not as loud as Hina though, for fighting her own tears back were an even harder accomplishment. This village, I disowned it as soon as it took you away from me. The thunder rumbled in the sky, but rain refused to come down along with it. The winds were becoming harsher as the two simply stared at each other. It's still our village, Hina, Mizuho spoke softly, her eyes starting to succumb to cold tears. And you've always been in my story, whether you like it or not. Hina brought a hand upon Mizuho's cheek, some of her blood attaching itself onto her pale skin. The contact immediately made her shiver, her eyes averting away from Hina. Listen, Hina said in a tone Mizuho hadn't heard in ages, this is not your story. Ever since we fell in love with each other, it has become our story. Mizuho's breathing became shallower, as her heart rate increased. She finally tore her eyes from the ground and looked up at Hina, but for the village. Listen to me, Hina said once again, stroking the other woman's hair, will it really help your village if you kill me? Mizuho turned away, Hina's hand being knocked off, her eyes still on her ex-lover, you're the enemy. Silence stirred up once again, the tension doing nothing but increase. Both hesitated to begin the fight. Mizuho dug deep into herself, trying to find her determination. However, her feelings continued to stand in the way. Hina, the boss requests that you finish their leader quickly then. Return. In a flash, the masked ninja's head was severed, and the two didn't move at all. We need to hurry this, Mizuho stated, clenching her fist tightly. She flinched when Hina began to laugh. It was almost sad. What the hell are you talking about? What do we need to hurry? We haven't done much but blab to each other. Hina ran her fingers through her hair, and with a sigh she shook her head, fine. Let's hurry. Oh great leader Sama. The thunder continued to roar, as the tension-filled brawl continued. Even though his body felt light from the weights, he pressure having to keep on fighting kept on piling atop his heaving shoulders. By this time, Naruto managed to get through things alone. Yumi had left earlier so the two can cover more ground. With his sweater tattered and frayed, Naruto only prayed that it wouldn't begin to rain. What the hell is this? Naruto scoffed, wiping sweat from his dirt-clad brow. He checked both ways for any sign of chakra before sitting against a tree for some rest. Man, they didn't even have backup back then. How in the world could this village still exist? Cringing from the sound of the fallen, Naruto then stood right back up. The blonde was growing weary, but little did he know, he was fighting the easier battle. Ah! Came a yell. Naruto's ears perked up. It was a sound that sounded dangerously familiar. With a growl, the boy began to head in the direction of the voice. Only muttering minor curses to himself, Naruto managed to get there in a speed he didn't remember having. Stopping upon a branch of a tree, Naruto's eyes widened as the body of his precious someone be ripped into shreds. Chapter 18, Aishiteru. I fail guys. I even started on Christmas fix, then tried to do a Valentine one. Bah, I hope you guys are still reading. It's almost going to be 3 years and I haven't reached 20 chaps _ wish me luck. Chapter 18, The Animal Within. INO. Came the roar of no one but Naruto. Even though his anger had emerged, none of that demonic aura began to spill from his body. Instead, tears found their way down his tanned face. He fell to the ground, his nails digging into the ground. Within a flash, his head rose, his eyes searching for the one who did such a thing. That was, until he felt a rush of wind invade his personal space. Naruto. Came a sweetly familiar voice. Naruto turned to face his fellow blonde, shock in his eyes. She frowned at his expression, and simply shook her head. INO. Naruto muttered, his voice shaking only a bit. He touched his face, and tears continued to trickle down. Geez Naruto, I know this is a tough battle, but you don't have to be a crybaby, the girl said, looking around the area. 2 other bodies emerged from flaming red. Heads had made their presence known to Naruto once again. We took care of those genjutsu users, Max said, wiping some blood from the corner of his mouth. A bruise was evident under his eye, but it didn't prevent him from giving his charming smile to INO. Naruto had forgotten his reason to cry as he nearly fell over, seeing Mia having the same expression. You sure are popular, INO, Naruto commented with a sigh, wiping his nose and eyes for any remaining liquids. He let out a nervous laugh as the 2Ms approached him with smirks. You're her friend, whispered Mia carefully while INO started inspecting for any other ninjas. She casually put an arm around Naruto, her brother doing the same to the blonde but from the other side. Which one of us would she choose? Max continued, the look in his face clearly showing confidence. Naruto started, not really wanting to think about this, I'm not really sure. He continued, scratching his forehead, but I don't know if she's interested in girls. Ha ha, Max cried triumphantly, pumping his fists into the air. Naruto rose his eyebrow and pouted at this gesture. Damn, Mia muttered, crossing her arms over her chest. The three all looked over to where INO was wandering around. Feeling their stares, she turned to look at them with a curious gaze. Since when were you 3 so buddy-buddy? She asked, approaching the group of ninjas. Naruto rolled his eyes as the 2 siblings removed their parts from his. A soft sound came from the east as a red kunai came flying out of nowhere. The 4 jumped away immediately, but explosive tag reacted once the red blade came into contact with the ground. The 2 siblings managed to balance themselves atop a tree, Mia holding INO's legs and Max holding INO's arms. They were in a rather awkward position. Or, at least awkward for INO. Her cheeks instantly turned red as the 2 handled her, gently. She then came to a realization that her teammate wasn't with them. By is time she had learned to ignore the constant bickering over herself and analyzed the area for any trace of that spiky golden hair. INO's blue eyes wavered over the destruction of the area. She knew that Naruto couldn't possibly be hurt by that, but she couldn't help but worry. I think our children would look gorgeous, INO decided to pick up on the conversation. It was Mia who just said that, and INO couldn't help but feel a little sick. Impossible, you're a girl, replied Max, sounding a little proud. He wrapped an arm around INO's waist and pulled her close. Stop that, Mia yelled, grabbing INO's arm. She pulled a little too hard. The sound of an explosion startled the 3, to the point where Max let go and INO landed on her face. Ag! Came an incredibly loud groan. From the same direction of the explosion. INO quickly recovered from her fall and ran as quickly as she could. Before Max and Mia began to argue with each other again, the 2 looked at each other with disappointment then worry. The 2 redheads let out a sigh and decided to stop. She's leaving after this whole fight anyways, Max started, scratching the back of his head, she's been distracting us so much. Mia put her hands behind her head and closed her eyes, yeah. How about we stop arguing over a lost cause? What makes it lost, exactly? Asked the brother, stretching his arms and wiping the dirt off his face. Mia dropped down from the tree and Max followed afterwards. They gave each other a high five and took out their special fighting gloves. We're going to kick ass, okay? Mia finally responded, getting an eye roll from her brother. For INO, for our village. Naruto could feel a strong tingle within the core of his legs. The flash was instant, the explosion came from nowhere. He swore he got away in time, he swore that he followed after the siblings as they brought INO with them up onto a tree. He swore that he had never felt pain like this before. Ag! The boy groaned again, unable to even move. He managed to open his eyes and saw that it was still dark. He turned his head to as best of an angle as he could get. The stars were out, and signs of smoke and fire was in the air. He stopped himself from groaning again and listened for anyone nearby. However, all he could hear was the sound of kunai clashing. Shit, this hurts so much, Naruto muttered. The tingling in his legs spreading throughout his body. What the hell happened to me? Yo, came the voice of a stranger. Naruto didn't feel the presence of the person who owned the voice, but looked around to try to find them. Where the hell am I? Who are you? He yelled, regretting the wriggling around part. The sting in his body doubled, and he felt in contact with a muddy ground. A dark shadow hummed over Naruto at this point. With pain shot clear through his eyes, he looked up and tried to study the figure. It appeared to be a tall man in a black cloak with some dark red clouds on it. There was this dark aura around him, and as he got closer, Naruto felt a chill go down his aching spine. Nine tails, the shadow muttered, gazing down at Naruto. The younger boy couldn't make out any distinctive properties. The only thing he noticed was the cloak. Naruto-kun, came the cry of a familiar girl. The shadow over Naruto disappeared instantly, and so did the ties that kept him still. However, the pain continued to shoot through his body, and the sudden thump against the ground didn't help at all. INO, Naruto managed to mutter as the lighter blonde came to his side. He remembered that it wasn't good to worry INO, so he worked every muscle in his body to move. As he pulled himself together enough to get off his back, he realized that the rope that kept him bound was just a genjutsu, probably by that cloaked man. He grunted as the pain increased with every move. "Stay still," yelled the female. Worry was clear in her eyes as she watched Naruto attempt to smile through his winces of pain. She put a hand on his shoulder to stop him from trying to stand up. "I'm fine, INO," he replied, trying to push her away. He hated seeing her so worried like this. "He's supposed to be strong." "No, you're not," she retorted, now pushing him back down. Through her anger, she knocked the boy over, getting another loud grunt. "Ow," as the boy hit the floor once more. "INO-chan. That hurt." Another sound. At this point every sound was horrific enough to make the two freeze. This sound made it very clear that someone was there. That someone was out to get them. Only being genin, they managed to look tough enough. However, when the time came, they were only kids. "Who's there?" INO got up as she continued to yell this out to her surroundings. Naruto finally managed to get up and stood away from INO so that she wouldn't force him back down. "Who's there?" the blonde repeated, putting herself into a proper fighting stance. In a quick second, the two looked upwards to see a dark metal begin to fall towards them. Fusajin. And all the sharp objects were out of the way. Naruto turned to where the voice was coming from and saw two familiar red heads. "INO, watch out," cried Max as a shinobi ran past Naruto. One shot was all it took. The blood spilled from the wound along the long katana. The shinobi pulled the katana out and was then pushed away by Mia. Naruto ran to INO's side, suddenly forgetting the pain on his body, but feeling the pounding of his heart. This shinobi wore all black and a blindfold. Anko, Yakedo and an injured Koyuki came blazing past, and the black-clad man made a run for it again. Mia turned to INO and began to run towards her, but Max stopped her and shook his head. She bit her lip as the two ran after the rest of them, hoping to be of assistance. Naruto's eyes flashed a strange red, and he could feel his heart racing like crazy. He ripped a sleeve off his sweater and tried to soak up the wound. INO was out of it and all he could do was try to stop the bleeding. He twitched as his fingers elongated and his nails turned into claws. He felt an incredible power surge through him. From D like a demon. However, if one were to examine his face carefully, one could say that he looked like a monster. The scars that looked like whiskers expanded, his eyes grew larger and narrower, the blue turned red. Black surrounded the eye, and tears streamed down his face like mad. The boy couldn't think anymore. He put the girl on his back and ran towards the nearest medical center. Dropping her off, he felt more power surge through him. His eyesight improved, his hearing improved, and most of all, his sense of smell improved. He spilled her blood, he muttered, a raspy tone added to his voice, "He must die." The blindfolded man cackled as he ran through the trees. He sounded like a madman whose pants were on fire, but liked it. "Who is that?" asked Mia as the two caught up to the older bunch. Yakedo slowed down a bit so at Anko and Koyuki could really catch up while he explained the situation. "That blindfold of his is pissing me off," scowled Max as he clenched his fist tightly. Mia nodded in agreement and Yakedo could see identical expressions in both of their eyes. "He's the leader," Yakedo put it simply, almost copying their glare. "We've been running after him for about an hour or so." "What?" the two yelled in unison. They knew that if they ran at this speed for over an hour, they'd be tired. There was no sign of any of that tiredness on the three Junin or the blindfolded man. "Leave," Someone else out there might need your help, Yakedo suggested, giving them a very serious look. He increased his pace a bit and began to run backwards to face them. We'll handle this. The two growled at this request, but out of respect they nodded. For the past hour or so Shino, Chi and the younger troops have been fighting off scout ninjas. The younger shinobi took turns fighting, as their stamina wasn't as great as Chi's or Shino's. Earlier, Shino's insects reported that everything is going okay for now. Everyone is off into their own battles, and only a few of their own people have fallen, and several were at medical stations. However, the location of their leader is still unknown. Mushi Arare no Jutsu, muttered the Konoha shinobi. Shino hurled the newly formed balls at various enemy ninja and they exploded on contact. As they were stung by the explosion, Shino ran in to use a little taijutsu. A punch here, a kick there, and more scouts fell to the ground. She had amazing strength and it was evident by the reactions of the enemy ninja with every blow she gave. Shino had no time to admire such a strength, as he was busy rushing to help the younger ones. With a swift knee jolt in the ribs, another shinobi was down and she had some free space. Quickly, she made several hand signs and pulled out an empty sword handle. Kei's katana, she muttered, a sharp wind building up at the handle. It formed the shape of a katana and the sound of the rushing winds was not evident. Hiya, yelled young Kira as he drove a kunai into the leg of the older ninja. As the enemy screamed in pain, two more from his group stuck an explosion tag on the man. The three jumped back as they detonated, the man not being able to respond in time. Fear struck into Kira's heart as he felt a punch in his stomach. He was caught off guard from the satisfaction of another kill, and found himself flying through the air. Shino acted quickly and caught the boy in time. Mushi Kabe no Jutsu, he yelled, forming a bug wall as the shinobi came for another blow. Once his fist got in contact with the wall, he screamed and fell back, feeling his chakra be drained. In one fell swoop, she came down on this attacker and input a deep cut into his back. Kira, she yelled as Shino put down the bug wall. Kira ran out of Shino's arms and into his sister's. I think the younger troops should fall back. They're all tired and it seems that stronger scouts are on their way. Shino seemed a little worried, but it wasn't extremely clear on his face. Fine, she muttered, holding her weeping brother close to her. No, yelled Kira, now pulling away from his sister, quickly trying to wipe away his tears. We can still fight. It's useless if you died, Shino responded right away. Kira's face became angry. Oni-chan. We can do this. We really can. Before the boy could storm off the yell more face to face with Shino, his sister knocked him out. Let's bring them to the shelters, she muttered, her voice a little sad. Growing tired yet, Konoha ninja, the leader yelled, giving Anko a cocky smirk. Not at all, blind bastard, Anko retorted, flinging another kunai at his face. It was an easy dodge, and he responded by flinging some shuriken at her. She dodged it as smoothly as he had dodged her incoming weapon. You're really starting to piss me off, she growled, forming several hand signs. Blindfolded leader simply laughed and increased his pace, hoping to dodge whatever jutsu Anko had up her sleeve. Kaden. Sanejishu, she yelled, snakes pouring from her sleeves. Interesting, that's all she heard before the leader finally came to a stop. He fell to the ground as his sleeve caught on fire. He forced the snakes away, and was glad that the cloudy skies finally decided to let go of its rain. You going to stop running? She asked, giving him a glare, because I want to get this over with as soon as possible. Yakedo managed to catch up and noticed that Koyuki was gone. He stood next to Anko and gave her a curious look. She turned to him and gave him a smirk. He rose his eyebrow, not knowing what she meant. However, he trusted her and then turned to the blindfolded man. Are you mocking us? Asked Anko, pointing at his blindfold. If you're so confident, just take off that blindfold and get rid of us. His expression changed from a smirk to a frown. As quickly as the thunder roared, the frown turned back into a smirk. He rose his left arm and untied the back of his blindfold. The thunder crackled again as Anko brought herself to gasp. Yakedo simply stared in disgust. There were empty sockets and a long scar across his eyes. Around the edges, he looked a little burnt, but it was still too dark to tell. Happy? He asked, forming several hand signs. The two nodded as they returned to a more alert stance. After he finished with his hand signs, he flung about 10 kunai at the two Junin. As expected, they dodged it easily and the two ran towards him from each side. Sweden. Haka, muttered the leader, and the three were pulled into a deep ditch. It all happened quickly, but Anko turned to see water leaving the ground, heading upwards to empty the hole and turn the ground solid. No moisture, only at the top now. How about a fair, 2-on-2 battle? The leader offered, biting his thumb. Quickly, he summoned some sort of large crab from the ground. It stood to be about double his size in height, and triple his size in width. This'll be fun, won't it be, Yakedo? Anko smirked, bloodlust clear in her eyes. There was no more running, just a fight. Oh, yes, started the leader, pulling himself into a fighting stance. I guess you'd like to know the name of your killer. I could care less, Anko retorted, laughing to herself. You will soon regret your cockiness, dear Konoha ninja. Let it be known that your life will end by my hands. The hands of the great Mokushi. She tried to compose herself as she and Shino walked away from the guarded shelters. It had come to over 2 hours of this fighting, and nothing really was settled. There was only death. You did a good thing by bringing him back, Shino claimed, the rain pouring down hard. She didn't respond. You know, he's a ninja. You trained him yourself, he was bound to get. Where are you going with this? She yelled, startling Shino a bit. He backed down and turned away, his hands shoved into his pocket. There was an awkward silence as the two wandered back onto the battlefield. Shino decided it was best not to talk when she was like this, and he didn't mind. He never really was one to talk. I'm sorry, she replied, breaking the silence. Shino turned to her and looked her in the eyes. Through the rain she was crying. He felt a little bad, but that quickly sailed over his head. As she was about to hug him in an attempt to ask for comfort, a blade came and swept her head off. Naruto was in a rage as he stormed through the rain. The smell of blood increased as he ripped through enemy ninja, his focus being on the scent of the one who injured INO. It wasn't until he was stabbed in the back that his rage came to an end and he found his face in the mud. Crap, he muttered, feeling the pain in his body again. He could feel himself crying. Sure, she was safe and being taken care of, but she got injured while he was there. How am I supposed to become Hokage and I let my friends be hurt right in front of me? He whispered to himself, not feeling the urge to get up. A loud yell got him to stand up. He was startled, and freaked out a bit. However, the pain alerted him that he was not in the condition to be freaking out. The yell echoed throughout the forest, and he couldn't help but feel that the voice was a bit familiar.